The wedding that never was. When a mafia boss's perfect bride became his perfect nightmare behind a silk curtain in Manhattan's most exclusive bridal salon, Evelyn Cross stood frozen as her world shattered in whispers. Her fiancé, the untouchable Lucien Moretti, was promising forever to someone else. Her assistant. Her friend. In 72 hours, she was supposed to become Mrs. Moretti. Instead, she became something far more dangerous. A woman with nothing left to lose and everything to destroy. This is the story of how a betrayed bride dismantled a criminal empire one elegant move at a time. If you want to see how far revenge can go when wrapped in Valentino and strategy, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The champagne was Dom Perignon. The lighting was perfect. The dress was a masterpiece. Evelyn Cross stood on the raised platform in Maison Laurent's private fitting suite, surrounded by mirrors that reflected her from every angle. The gown was everything she'd imagined. Ivory silk that moved like water, French lace so delicate it seemed woven from moonlight, a train that would cascade down the cathedral steps like a river of dreams. She looked like a bride. She felt like a queen. Absolutely stunning, Margot, the head seamstress, breathed, her French accent thick with professional satisfaction. Monsieur Moretti will forget how to breathe when he sees you. Evelyn smiled, the expression practiced and perfect. After 6 years with Lucien Moretti, she'd learned exactly which smile to wear for every occasion. This was her serene bride smile, the one that said she was a woman who'd found everything she'd ever wanted. And she had, hadn't she? Lucien Moretti wasn't just handsome, though his dark eyes and sharp jawline could make even the most jaded socialite forget her manners. He wasn't just wealthy, though his real estate empire stretched across 3 states, and his name opened doors that remained closed to lesser men. He was power incarnated, the kind of man who walked into rooms and changed their gravity, who spoke softly because he never needed to raise his voice to be obeyed. Yes, there were rumors. Whispers about his family's connections, about business dealings that skirted the edge of legality, about the dangerous men who sometimes appeared in his offices late at night. But Evelyn had spent 5 years as his partner, his confidant, and his greatest asset in transforming his image from dangerous outsider to legitimate power player. She'd introduced him to the right people, taught him which charities mattered, which galas to attend, which politicians to court with campaign donations instead of threats. Together, they'd built something extraordinary. In 72 hours, they would make it permanent. The bustle needs one more adjustment, Margot murmured, circling Evelyn like a sculptor examining her work. The way it drapes when you turn, it must be perfect. Give me just 10 minutes, yes? There's champagne in the lounge, and those little pastries you love. I'm fine here, Evelyn said, but Margot was already bustling toward the door. No, no, you must relax. This is your moment to dream, not to stand like a mannequin. Go, sit. I will fetch you when I'm ready. Before Evelyn could protest, Margot had swept out, leaving her alone with her reflection and the quiet afternoon light filtering through the salon's tall windows. She stepped down from the platform carefully, the gown's weight unfamiliar, and moved toward the small antique settee near the window. From here, she could see Fifth Avenue below. The stream of taxis, the hurried pedestrians, the whole magnificent chaos of Manhattan on a Thursday afternoon. In 72 hours, she would walk down the aisle of St. Patrick's Cathedral. 500 guests, an 8-piece orchestra, flowers shipped from Ecuador and France. The wedding would be featured in town and country, and the reception at the plaza would be talked about for years. Evelyn closed her eyes and let herself sink into the fantasy for just a moment. The dress. The cathedral. Lucien waiting at the altar in his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, looking at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. That's when she heard them. The voices came from the other side of the ornate dressing screen that separated her fitting room from the next suite. Maison Laurent catered to clients who valued absolute privacy. Each fitting room was supposed to be soundproofed, isolated, discreet. But the screen was decorative, not functional, and the voices on the other side were crystal clear. You're glowing. A man's voice, low and intimate. I can't stop looking at you. Evelyn's eyes opened. She knew that voice. It belonged to the man who whispered to her in the dark, who called her Bellissima and promised her the world. Lucien. I'm terrified, a woman's voice answered, softer. younger. Also familiar in a way that made Evelyn's stomach drop. What if someone sees? What if she... Evelyn won't be here for hours, Lucian said, and Evelyn heard the smile in his voice. She's at the design house reviewing floral arrangements. She sent me her schedule this morning, color-coded and cross-referenced naturally. My beautiful, meticulous control freak. The woman laughed. It was a sound Evelyn had heard 1,000 times before, in her office, during late nights at the design studio, over coffee and strategy sessions. Lila Mercer, her assistant, her protege, the 26-year-old NYU graduate she'd personally recruited and mentored for the past 2 years. Evelyn's hand moved to her throat, fingers pressing against the strand of pearls Lucian had given her last Christmas. Her breathing had gone shallow. The dress suddenly felt too tight. I love when you call her that, Lila said, and there was something cruel in her tone now, something sharp. It's so perfectly condescending. Does she know that you think she's exhausting? Evelyn is many things, Lucian replied. Brilliant, strategic, exactly what I needed to become exactly who I needed to be. But exhausting? Carissima, you have no idea. Evelyn stood frozen, her designer gown suddenly feeling like a costume, a prop in someone else's play. 3 more days, Lila whispered. I don't know if I can stand it. Watching you marry her, watching everyone celebrate while you're carrying my child, Lucian finished, his voice dropping to that dangerous softness he used when he was being sincere. While you're giving me something she never could. Something real. The room tilted. Evelyn's hand shot out, gripping the back of the settee for balance. The ivory silk of her wedding gown rustled with the movement, too loud in the sudden silence that filled her head. Pregnant. Lila was pregnant with Lucian's child. I wanted to tell her so many times, Lila continued. Did you see her face yesterday when she was going through the seating chart? So serious, so focused on making sure everything was perfect. She kept asking me to confirm which of your business associates needed to be seated near the family section. I almost laughed. She's good at details, Lucian said. That's what makes her valuable. She thinks if she manages every variable, controls every outcome, she can make the world behave. It's endearing, in a tedious way. Do you love her at all? Lila asked. The pause that followed was longer than it should have been. I respect her, Lucian finally said. She's been exactly what I needed. The perfect polished surface to hide what's underneath. Evelyn Cross, the brilliant design executive with the impeccable reputation and the society connections. She made me legitimate, opened doors that would have stayed closed to a Moretti, turned me from a threat into a trophy. That's not an answer, Lila pressed. It's the only answer that matters, Lucian replied, and Evelyn heard movement, fabric rustling, footsteps on carpet. Love is for people who have the luxury of choosing based on feelings. I chose based on strategy, and in 3 days that strategy becomes permanent. I'll have everything I need, the legitimate business empire, the social standing, the political connections. And I'll have you. Both of you. What happens after? Lila's voice had gone quieter. After the wedding? After the wedding, nothing changes. Evelyn will be my wife, beautiful, accomplished, perfect for photographs and charity galas. And you'll be mine in the ways that actually matter. Discreet, protected, cherished. She'll find out eventually, Lila said. She's too smart not to. Lucian laughed. It was the same laugh he'd given Evelyn 1,000 times. Warm, indulgent, utterly confident. Evelyn sees exactly what she wants to see. She spent years convincing herself that I'm a reformed bad boy who just needed the love of a good woman to become respectable. She believes her own fairy tale. Why would she question it now? Because I'm pregnant, Lila said flatly. Because that's not exactly subtle. By the time anyone notices, I'll be married, untouchable, and you'll be taken care of. The apartment in Brooklyn I bought under the shell company, the trust fund I'm establishing for the baby. Everything will be perfect, compartmentalized, clean. Evelyn's fingers had gone numb. She looked down and realized she was gripping the settee so hard her knuckles had turned white against the ivory silk of her gloves. She wanted to scream, to tear through the screen and confront them both, to rip off this ridiculous dress and burn it in the middle of Fifth Avenue. Instead, she did something that surprised even herself. She reached into the small beaded clutch she'd set on the settee and pulled out her phone. Her hands were steady as she opened the voice recording app, steady as she pressed record, steady as she held the phone up toward the screen, capturing every word of the conversation that was destroying her life. "I'm scared," Lila was saying now. "What if the prenup?" "The prenup is handled," Lucien interrupted. "My lawyers wrote it. Evelyn's lawyers reviewed it. It's airtight and completely in my favor." She was so focused on protecting my business interests, so determined to prove she trusted me, that she never questioned the terms. Evelyn's lawyer had questioned the terms, had told her the agreement was unusually weighted toward Lucy's benefit, had advised against signing. Evelyn had overruled her because she trusted Lucien, because she believed in them. "What about Evelyn's company?" Lila asked. "Cross Design Collective is worth millions. She built it from nothing, and she'll keep running it," Lucien said smoothly. "I'm not interested in fabric swatches and interior design, but the contacts she's made, the access she's earned, that becomes mine through marriage. Her reputation becomes my reputation. Her legitimacy becomes my legitimacy. That's what this has always been about." Evelyn's thumb pressed down on the screen, making sure the recording was still active. Every word, every casual cruelty, every calculated manipulation. "I love you," Lila whispered. "I know I shouldn't. I know it's wrong, but I do." "I know," Lucien said, and Evelyn could hear the smile in his voice again. "You're so beautifully uncomplicated, so refreshingly honest, you have no idea what a relief that is." The sound of a kiss. Soft, intimate, the kind of kiss that meant something. Evelyn stood there in her wedding dress, recording the sound of her fiancé kissing her assistant, and felt something inside her that had been soft and warm for 6 years turn to ice. The voices moved away from the screen toward the door of the other fitting room, still talking in low murmurs that the recording would capture, but Evelyn could no longer distinguish. Then the door opened and closed, and they were gone. Evelyn stood alone in the afternoon light, surrounded by mirrors that showed her from every angle in the dress she would never wear. She pressed stop on the recording, checked to make sure it had saved properly. Then she opened her messages and sent 3 texts in rapid succession. The first was to her lawyer, "Need to see you, tonight, emergency." The second was to her assistant, not Lila, but her other assistant, Marcus, who handled her personal affairs. "Clear my schedule for tomorrow, all day. Don't tell anyone." The third was to herself, a reminder. Do not cry. Do not break. Do not give them the satisfaction. She stood there for another moment, looking at her reflection. The dress really was perfect. The bride in the mirror looked radiant, but the woman wearing the dress was already planning a war. When Margot returned 15 minutes later, she found Evelyn exactly where she'd left her, poised, serene, smiling that perfect practice smile. "I think the bustle is perfection now," Margot announced. "Come, let me show you." Evelyn stepped back onto the platform and let Margot fuss with the fabric, making minute adjustments that didn't matter anymore. She watched her reflection turn and pose and move exactly as a bride should. "You're so calm," Margot observed, pinning a final fold. "Most brides at this stage are nervous wrecks, but you look like you don't have a care in the world." Evelyn met her own eyes in the mirror. "I've learned that staying calm is the best revenge," she said. Margot laughed, not understanding. "Revenge for what?" "For being underestimated," Evelyn replied. The apartment Evelyn shared with Lucien occupied the top 2 floors of a converted brownstone in the West Village. It was beautiful in the studied, expensive way that spoke of professional designers and unlimited budgets, exposed brick and modern art, floor-to-ceiling windows and custom furniture, every surface carefully curated to project success and taste. Evelyn had designed most of it herself, back when she still believed she was building a home instead of a showroom. She arrived at 7:30. Lucien's car wasn't in the private garage yet, which meant he was still at whatever meeting had supposedly kept him busy all afternoon. Or still with Lila. The thought didn't even hurt anymore. Just 3 hours after the salon, and already the pain had crystallized into something harder, clearer. She took the private elevator to the main floor and walked through rooms that suddenly felt like a stranger's home. Everything looked exactly the same. Nothing would ever be the same again. In the master bedroom, she changed out of her day clothes with mechanical precision, removed her jewelry, washed her face, pulled on yoga pants and a cashmere sweater, the kind of casual comfort she wore when it was just the two of them, when Lucien would pull her into his lap and call her beautiful without makeup, when she'd believed he meant it. She was sitting in the library with a glass of wine and a book she wasn't reading when she heard his key in the lock. "Evelyn?" His voice carried through the apartment. "Are you home?" She took a breath, arranged her face into the expression she needed. "In here," she called back. Lucien appeared in the doorway moments later, still wearing his suit from whatever meeting he'd actually attended. He was 42 but looked younger, the kind of effortless handsomeness that came from good genes and better tailoring, dark hair starting to silver at the temples, eyes that could shift from warm to cold in a heartbeat, the kind of smile that made people want to trust him, even when their instincts screamed otherwise. He'd used that smile on her for 6 years. "There's my beautiful bride," he said, crossing the room to kiss her forehead. "How was the fitting?" Evelyn accepted the kiss without flinching. "Perfect. Margot is a genius. I have no doubt you look stunning." He poured himself a scotch from the bar cart and settled into the chair across from her. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there to see." "You'll see in 3 days," Evelyn said. "Tradition and all that?" "Tradition," Lucien repeated, smiling. "You and your traditions. I love that about you." "Do you?" Evelyn thought. "Or do you just find it useful?" "How was your day?" she asked instead. "Productive?" "Signed the papers on the Chelsea property. Had lunch with the development team. Spent the afternoon reviewing contracts." He sipped his scotch, utterly relaxed. The usual Thursday chaos. Every word a lie, or at least every word designed to hide the truth. Evelyn watched him over the rim of her wine glass and marveled at how easy it was for him, how smoothly the deception rolled off his tongue, how completely he believed she would accept it. "I've been thinking," she said carefully, "about the business, about making sure everything is protected as we move forward." Lucien raised an eyebrow. "Protected how?" "Legacy planning, asset protection, making sure that if anything ever happened, which it won't, but if it did, everything we've built would be secure." She set down her wine glass and met his eyes. "I spoke with my lawyer last month. She suggested we might want to formalize some additional protections beyond the prenup." "The prenup is comprehensive," Lucien said. His tone hadn't changed, but something in his posture had gone alert. "I know, but you're expanding so rapidly. The new developments, the international properties. It might be wise to have some additional structures in place. Corporate veils, liability shields, that kind of thing." She smiled. "It's what I'd advise any of my clients in your position." "You're not my interior designer, Carissima. You're going to be my wife." "Which is exactly why I want to make sure you're protected," Evelyn said smoothly. "The prenup protects our personal assets, but your business empire needs additional safeguards, especially with the IPO discussions you mentioned last month." That got his attention. Lucien's company going public was his ultimate goal, the final transformation from dangerous outsider to legitimate business titan. "What kind of safeguards?" he asked. "Just some corporate restructuring, updated operating agreements, cleaner liability separation." Evelyn picked up her wine again, keeping her voice casual. "My lawyer drafted something, very standard. It would formalize your control position while protecting against any potential future challenges. Business partners, investors, that kind of thing." She was lying. The documents waiting in her lawyer's office were anything but standard. But Lucien didn't know that, because Lucien thought she was exactly what he'd said she was: meticulous, detail-oriented, trustworthy, the kind of woman who would never think to question him, much less trap him. "I'd need to have my lawyers review anything like that," Lucien said. "Of course. I wouldn't expect anything less." Evelyn smiled. "Although we're running out of time before the wedding, if you want this in place before we're legally married, which would be cleaner from a tax perspective, we'd need to move quickly." She watched him calculate, weigh the risks against the benefits, decide whether this was worth his attention or just another one of Evelyn's well-intentioned attempts to help. "Send me the documents," he said finally. "I'll have my team look at them tomorrow." "Perfect." Evelyn stood, crossing to him and settling into his lap the way she had 1,000 times before. She let him wrap his arms around her, breathed in the expensive cologne he wore, felt the solid warmth of his chest against her cheek. "I just want us to be protected. Everything we've built together, I want to make sure it lasts forever. Lucien's hand came up to stroke her hair. Forever, he repeated. I like the sound of that. Evelyn closed her eyes and let him hold her, knowing it was probably the last time she would let him touch her without wanting to scream. I love you, she whispered, because it was what she was supposed to say, because he expected it. I love you too, Lucien replied automatically, and Evelyn wondered if he even noticed he was lying. She stayed in his arms for exactly 5 more minutes. Then she excused herself to take a bath, leaving him with his scotch and his secrets and his absolute certainty that he had everything under control. In the bathroom, with the door locked and the water running to cover any sound, Evelyn finally let herself cry. But only for 3 minutes. Then she washed her face, steadied her breathing, and opened her phone to the recording she'd made that afternoon. She listened to the whole thing twice. Every word, every casual cruelty, every calculated betrayal. Then she forwarded it to her lawyer with a single message. This is what we're working with. I want him destroyed. The response came back in under a minute. Come to my office tomorrow morning, bring everything, we go to war. Evelyn smiled at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were red from crying, but they were also hard, focused. 3 days until the wedding. 72 hours to build a trap sophisticated enough to catch a man who thought he was already untouchable. She could work with that. Rebecca Chen's law office occupied the 38th floor of a steel and glass tower in Midtown. She was 53, ruthlessly brilliant, and famous for destroying powerful men who thought their money and influence made them bulletproof. Evelyn had hired her 6 months ago to review the prenuptial agreement Lucien's lawyers had drafted. Rebecca had recommended against signing, had pointed out a dozen ways the document was weighted in Lucien's favor, had suggested amendments that would have given Evelyn actual protection. Evelyn had ignored her advice and signed anyway. Now she was back, sitting across from Rebecca's massive desk, with a leather portfolio containing documents, recordings, and 6 years of carefully kept records. I was wrong, Evelyn said without preamble. You were right. I should have listened. Rebecca's expression didn't change. You're here now? Tell me everything. Evelyn told her, every detail. The conversation at the salon. Lila's pregnancy. Lucien's manipulation. The realization that their entire relationship had been a strategic acquisition disguised as romance. When she finished, Rebecca sat back in her chair and steepled her fingers. The prenup is a problem, she said bluntly. You signed away most of your leverage. In a standard divorce, you'd walk away with almost nothing. He made sure of that. I know. But you're not here for a standard divorce, are you? Evelyn met her eyes. I'm here to make sure he loses everything. Rebecca's smile was sharp. Then we need to be creative. Tell me about his business operations. Everything you know. This was where 6 years of being Lucien's partner became useful. Evelyn had spent years helping him build his empire, attending meetings, reviewing contracts, introducing him to investors and politicians and society figures who would never have given him the time of day without her imprimatur. She knew where the money came from. She knew which developments were legitimate and which were covers for something darker. She knew about the offshore accounts and the shell companies and the business partners who showed up in the middle of the night and left before dawn. She'd known for years. She'd just chosen to believe Lucien when he said he was leaving that life behind. Now she laid it all out for Rebecca like a map to buried treasure. He's been moving money, Evelyn said. Large amounts. I didn't pay attention before. I thought it was just business. But last month I noticed some transfers that didn't make sense. Moving funds between accounts for developments that don't exist yet. Shell companies I'd never heard of receiving payments for services that were never rendered. Rebecca's eyes had sharpened. Do you have proof? I have access to our joint accounts, and I have login credentials for several of his business accounts. He gave them to me last year when he wanted me to review some contracts. Evelyn pulled out her laptop. I haven't looked deeply, but if there's something there, there's something there, Rebecca said grimly. Men like Moretti always have something there. The question is whether it's enough to override the prenup. The prenup, Evelyn said slowly. You said it's airtight. It is. But what if he violated the terms? Rebecca leaned forward. What terms? There's a morality clause, Evelyn said. Standard language about fidelity and conduct befitting the marriage. I remember your associate adding it. I thought it was just boilerplate. It is boilerplate, but boilerplate can be useful if properly triggered. Rebecca pulled up a document on her computer. The clause states that in the event of infidelity or moral turpitude, the injured party may seek remedy, including but not limited to adjusted asset division, and she stopped, read further, smiled, an immediate vesting of any voting rights or control positions contingent on the marriage. Evelyn felt her heart start to race. What does that mean? It means your fiancé was very clever, Rebecca said. Too clever. Look at this. Buried in the corporate structure documents attached to the prenup, there's a provision that upon marriage, you'll be granted voting rights in his holding company. Minority voting rights, but rights nonetheless. And there's a clause that says those rights vest immediately upon marriage and can only be revoked in the event of divorce or death. I don't understand. He structured it so that you'd have just enough stake to be useful. Legitimate, respectable Evelyn Cross with her shares in the Moretti Empire, but not enough to actually threaten his control. Except, Rebecca's smile widened. Except if he violates the morality clause before the marriage is finalized, the rights vest anyway, but the control provisions are voided, which means I'd have voting rights, but he'd lose control, Evelyn finished. Not just him. Look here, his business partners also have contingent control positions that vest on different triggers. If his position is voided, it triggers a cascade. The whole control structure falls apart. Evelyn stared at the documents, her mind racing. He wrote his own trap. He wrote a very sophisticated trap designed to protect his empire, Rebecca corrected. He just never imagined you'd be the one to spring it. They spent the next 4 hours going through everything. The recordings, the financial records Evelyn could access, the corporate documents, the prenup, the web of companies and accounts and relationships that made up Lucian's empire. By the time they finished, it was dark outside and Evelyn's head was spinning. Here's what we know, Rebecca said, making notes on a legal pad. 1. He's having an affair with your assistant. 2. She's pregnant with his child. 3. He's been moving money in ways that suggest either tax fraud, money laundering, or both. 4. He's about to marry you under false pretenses while planning to maintain the affair indefinitely. And 5. If we can prove the infidelity before the wedding, we can trigger the morality clause and destroy his control structure. But proving it means confronting him, Evelyn said, which means he'll know I know, which means he'll find a way to protect himself, Rebecca finished. Men like Moretti always do. We need something better than proof of an affair. We need something that makes him untouchable in a bad way, something that brings down his whole empire. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Then, Lila has proof, text messages, probably emails, maybe financial records of the apartment he bought her, the expenses he's been covering. Can you get them? I think so. She's terrified of him. I heard it in her voice this afternoon. She's scared of what happens if this falls apart. If I approach her the right way, position it as protection for her and the baby, she'll turn on him to save herself, Rebecca finished. It's worth trying, but Evelyn, if you do this, there's no going back. Once we start moving pieces, he'll notice, he'll fight back. Are you ready for that? Evelyn thought about the dress hanging in her closet, about the cathedral reservation and the florist orders, and the 500 guests who would be expecting a wedding in 48 hours. She thought about Lucian's voice saying she's been exactly what I needed, like she was a tool he'd used and was preparing to discard. She thought about Lila, pregnant and naive, and probably terrified, being used by a man who would sacrifice her the moment it became convenient. I'm ready, Evelyn said. Lila Mercer lived in a small apartment in Brooklyn, or at least that's what Evelyn had always thought. Now driving through the darkened streets toward the address Rebecca's investigator had provided, Evelyn realized how little she actually knew about the woman who'd worked beside her for 2 years. The building was in Dumbo, a renovated warehouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and a doorman and monthly rents that would have been impossible on an assistant's salary. Evelyn pulled into a parking spot across the street and sat there for a moment, studying the building. Lights glowed behind expensive curtains. People who could afford to live here didn't worry about money. People who had wealthy benefactors paying their rent didn't worry about money. She checked her phone. 8:47 p.m. Late enough that Lila would be home. Early enough to plausibly claim this was a spontaneous visit. Evelyn took a breath, checked her appearance in the mirror. She'd dressed carefully for this. Expensive but not threatening, polished but approachable. The kind of outfit that said she was here as a friend, not an employer. The doorman barely glanced at her when she walked in. "I'm here to see Lila Mercer," Evelyn said with the confidence of someone who belonged. "She's expecting me." Another lie, but an effective one. The doorman waved her toward the elevator. Apartment 6C. Evelyn pressed the buzzer and waited, her heart pounding despite her calm exterior. When the door opened, Lila's face went white. "Evelyn," she breathed, how did you... "Can I come in?" Evelyn asked quietly. "We need to talk." For a moment she thought Lila might slam the door, but instead, after a long hesitation, Lila stepped back and let her enter. The apartment was beautiful, hardwood floors and exposed brick, modern furniture and expensive art. The kind of place that screamed money, the kind of place Lucien would buy for a mistress he wanted to keep comfortable and quiet. "Nice place," Evelyn said, looking around. "How long have you lived here?" 6 months. Lila's voice was barely a whisper. "Must be expensive." "I have a roommate," Lila said, the lie reflexive. Evelyn turned to look at her, really look at her. Lila was 26 and beautiful in that effortless way of youth, clear skin, bright eyes, the kind of natural prettiness that didn't need much enhancement. She was wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater that didn't quite hide the small swell of her stomach. 3 months, maybe 4. Not showing yet to anyone who wasn't looking for it. "Lila," Evelyn said gently, "I heard you at the salon this afternoon. I was in the next fitting room." The color drained from Lila's face completely. "I heard everything," Evelyn continued. "Every word." Lila sank onto the couch like her legs had given out. "Oh my God." "How long?" Evelyn asked. "How long have you been sleeping with my fiancé?" Lila's hands were shaking. "A year, maybe a little longer." A year. While Evelyn had been planning the wedding, while she'd been introducing Lucien to her clients, building his reputation, believing in their future. "Does he love you?" Evelyn asked. Lila looked up, surprised by the question. He says he does." "Do you believe him?" The pause was telling. "I want to." Evelyn sat down on the chair across from her. "Can I tell you what I think? I think Lucien Moretti is very good at making women believe what he needs them to believe. I think he told me he loved me for 6 years while planning exactly how to use me. And I think he's telling you he loves you while planning exactly how to use you." "You don't know him like I do," Lila protested weakly. "Don't I? I know he bought you this apartment through a shell company, so there's no paper trail connecting it to him. I know he's been transferring money to offshore accounts to pay for your expenses without leaving evidence. I know he spent a year sleeping with both of us while planning a wedding that was never about love. It was about legitimacy and power and control." Tears were streaming down Lila's face now. "He said he was going to leave you. After the wedding, after everything was settled." "He's not going to leave me," Evelyn interrupted, "because I'm useful. I'm the respectable face he needs for his empire. You're the mistress he keeps hidden, and if anything goes wrong, if any of this threatens his position, he'll sacrifice both of us without hesitation." "That's not true," Lila whispered, but she didn't sound convinced. Evelyn leaned forward. "When did he set up this apartment? When did the money transfers start?" "Last year, after it got serious between us." "And when did his business expansion really take off? When did the major developments start?" Lila was quiet. "It's the same timeline, isn't it?" Evelyn pressed. "He started sleeping with you right around the time he started using my contacts and my reputation to secure funding for his projects. I was opening doors for him while you were, keeping him entertained? Making him feel young and desired and powerful?" "It wasn't like that," Lila said, but her voice had no conviction. "Then what was it like?" Evelyn asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like he's been running a very sophisticated con on both of us, using me for legitimacy, and you for..." She gestured at Lila's stomach. Lila's hand moved protectively to the small swell. "I'm pregnant with his child. He can't just..." "He can do whatever he wants," Evelyn said flatly. "He's a Moretti. Men like him don't leave paper trails, don't leave witnesses, don't leave problems unsolved." She paused. What do you think happens if this comes out? If people find out he's been cheating on his fiancée with her assistant? That there's a baby? He said it wouldn't matter. That once you were married, it would all be fine, compartmentalized. Compartmentalized, Evelyn repeated. That's a very clinical word for your child. Lila flinched. I'm not here to hurt you, Evelyn said, softening her tone. I'm here to help you. Because I think you're in danger. I think we both are. Lucien wouldn't what? Lie? Manipulate? Use people as tools and discard them when they become inconvenient? Evelyn pulled out her phone. I recorded the conversation at the salon. Do you want to hear it? Hear him describe exactly what you mean to him? Lila shook her head frantically. No, please. He called me a beautiful, meticulous control freak. Said I was exhausting. Said you were refreshingly honest and beautifully uncomplicated. Evelyn watched Lila's face. Do those sound like compliments to you, or do they sound like a man who sees both of us as means to an end? Lila was crying harder now. What do you want from me? I want proof, Evelyn said simply. Text messages, emails, financial records, anything that shows what's really been happening. And I want you to understand that if this falls apart, when this falls apart, you need to protect yourself and your baby. Because Lucien won't protect you. He'll protect himself. If I give you proof, he'll know it was me. If you don't give me proof, you'll spend the rest of your life waiting for him to decide you're a liability, Evelyn countered. Is that what you want for your child? A father who keeps you both hidden like shameful secrets? Lila was silent for a long time. Then, there are texts, emails. He's been sloppy lately. I think he stopped worrying about leaving evidence. Because he thinks he's already won, Evelyn said. Because in 48 hours, he'll be married to me and untouchable. What are you going to do? Evelyn stood. I'm going to make sure he faces consequences for what he's done. To both of us. To everyone he's used and manipulated. But I need your help. Lila looked up at her with red, swollen eyes. Why should I trust you? Because unlike Lucien, I'm telling you the truth, Evelyn said. And because deep down, you already know I'm right. She left her business card on the coffee table. Send everything to that email address, tonight if you can. And Lila, don't tell him I was here, don't tell him anything, just send the proof and let me handle the rest. Evelyn left the apartment and didn't look back. In the car, her hands were shaking so badly she had to sit for 5 minutes before she could drive. But by the time she pulled onto the Brooklyn Bridge, headed back to Manhattan, her hands were steady. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca. Any luck? Evelyn texted back. She'll send everything. We have 48 hours to build the case. Rebecca's response was immediate. Then let's make them count. The email arrived at 2:47 a.m. Evelyn was still awake, sitting in the library with her laptop open and a pot of coffee growing cold beside her. She'd sent Lucien a text hours ago saying she had a headache and was sleeping in the guest room, a lie he'd accepted without question because he was too busy celebrating with his business partners to care where she slept. When her phone chimed with the notification, her heart jumped. The email was from an address she didn't recognize, but the subject line was clear. Everything you asked for. Evelyn opened it with hands that had gone suddenly cold. Lila hadn't just sent proof. She'd sent a documentary of betrayal so comprehensive it made Evelyn's stomach turn. Text messages stretching back 14 months, hundreds of them. Lucien telling Lila she was beautiful, that he couldn't stop thinking about her, that being with Evelyn was exhausting but necessary. Lila responding with declarations of love and increasingly desperate questions about when he would leave, when they could be together publicly, when their child would have a real father instead of a secret one. Emails discussing the Brooklyn apartment, Lucien's instructions to his lawyer about setting up the shell company, the wire transfer confirmations, the lease agreement signed under a false name, financial statements showing monthly deposits into an account in Lila's name, receipts for jewelry, clothes, a car, and photos. Dozens of them. Lucien and Lila at restaurants outside the city where they thought no one would recognize them. Walking through Central Park early in the morning. In bed together, intimate and tender in ways that made Evelyn close her eyes against the evidence of how completely she'd been fooled. At the bottom of the email, Lila had written a single sentence. I'm sorry for everything. I hope this helps you. Evelyn forwarded the entire email to Rebecca, then sat back and let the reality of it wash over her. 14 months. While she'd been planning their future, Lucien had been building a second life. While she'd been defending him to skeptical friends and family, he'd been laughing about how exhausting she was. While she'd been believing in love, he'd been executing strategy. Her phone rang. Rebecca, despite the ungodly hour. "You got it," Evelyn said instead of hello. "I got it," Rebecca confirmed. "And it's better than I hoped. The financial trail alone is enough to raise serious questions. Shell companies, undisclosed accounts, money moving in patterns that suggest either tax evasion or worse. Combined with the affair evidence, we have everything we need to trigger the morality clause." "So we confront him?" "No," Rebecca said firmly. "We wait. Let him think everything is going according to plan. Meanwhile, I'm going to reach out to some contacts, quietly. The kind of people who investigate financial crimes for very powerful agencies. Because, Evelyn, I think your fiancé's problems go deeper than infidelity." "What do you mean?" "Some of these shell companies, I recognize the patterns. They're not just for hiding assets from a future wife. They're structures typically used for money laundering. And if Moretti is moving dirty money through legitimate real estate developments, then we're not just talking about a divorce," Evelyn finished. "We're talking about federal crimes." "Exactly. But that's good for us. Because if we can show he's been using his relationship with you, your reputation, your contacts, your legitimacy, to facilitate criminal activity, then you're not just a betrayed fiancé. You're a victim. And everything he's built becomes tainted." So Evelyn thought about the years she'd spent introducing Lucien to her world, the investors she'd vouched for him with, the politicians she'd brought to his fundraisers, the charity boards she'd helped him join. If he'd been using those connections to launder money, to build a criminal empire behind a legitimate facade, "I helped him," she said quietly. "I opened every door." "You were lied to," Rebecca corrected. "You were manipulated by someone who knew exactly how to use your trust and your reputation. That's not your fault. That's his crime." "What do we do now?" "Now we build the case. I'm bringing in a forensic accountant, someone discreet, someone who knows how to trace money through complicated structures. We have 40 hours until the wedding. I need you to do exactly what you've been doing. Act normal. Don't give him any reason to suspect." "And after?" Rebecca's voice went cold. "After, we destroy him." Evelyn ended the call and sat in the dark library, surrounded by books and expensive furniture and all the trappings of a life that had been built on lies. Then she opened her laptop and started writing. By the time the sun rose over Manhattan, she'd drafted the speech she would give in 40 hours. The words that would end Lucien Moretti's empire in front of everyone who'd helped him build it. She read it through twice, making small adjustments. Then she saved it, encrypted the file, and went to take a shower. When Lucien finally came home at 8 a.m., smelling of scotch and cigars and whatever celebration had kept him out all night, he found Evelyn in the kitchen making breakfast. "Good morning," she said brightly. "Coffee?" He looked surprised. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep, too excited." She smiled at him over the rim of her cup. 40 hours until I become Mrs. Moretti." Lucien crossed to her and pulled her into his arms. "My beautiful bride." Evelyn let him kiss her, let him hold her, let him believe she was still the woman who would walk down the aisle toward him with love in her eyes. "I have something for you to review," she said when he released her. "Those corporate documents I mentioned. My lawyer finalized them yesterday." She'd asked Rebecca to prepare a dummy set of documents, legitimate-looking corporate restructuring agreements that would mean nothing if signed. The real documents were locked in Rebecca's office, waiting for the right moment. But Lucien didn't know that. "Can it wait?" he asked. "I have meetings all day." "It really can't," Evelyn said apologetically. "If we want this in place before the wedding, we need to execute by tomorrow. It's just a formality. Your lawyers can review it, but honestly, it's so standard I don't think they'll have any concerns." She watched him calculate, saw the moment he decided this was just another one of Evelyn's well-intentioned attempts to help. Not worth his full attention. "Fine," he said. "Send them to my office. I'll have someone look at them." "Actually," Evelyn said carefully, "I thought we could review them together. Over dinner tonight? Just the two of us. One last quiet evening before the chaos of the wedding." Lucien hesitated. "Please," Evelyn added, "I know you're busy, but it would mean a lot to me. To feel like we're partners in this. The word partners did it. Lucien's expression softened. Of course, Carissima. Dinner tonight. Just us. He kissed her forehead and headed toward the bedroom to shower and change. Evelyn stood in the kitchen, coffee cup trembling slightly in her hands, and marveled at how easy it was to manipulate someone who thought you were incapable of deception. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Forensic accountant is in. We're starting the deep dive. Keep him distracted. Evelyn texted back. Dinner tonight. I'll handle it. Then she poured the rest of her coffee down the sink and went to get ready for the performance of her life. The day passed in a blur of final wedding preparations that Evelyn executed with mechanical precision. The florist called to confirm the delivery schedule. The caterer needed approval on the seating arrangements. The orchestra director wanted to verify the playlist for the ceremony. Evelyn handled it all with the calm efficiency everyone expected from her, while her mind was miles away calculating probabilities and planning moves like a chess grandmaster 3 steps ahead of checkmate. At noon, she met with Marcus, her personal assistant, at a coffee shop in Midtown. I need you to do something for me, she said without preamble. And I need you to not ask questions. Marcus had worked for Evelyn for 5 years. He knew when to push and when to simply execute. What do you need? Tomorrow morning, I need you to make calls. Very specific calls. She handed him a list. These are members of Lucien's board of directors, his major investors, his business partners. Tell them there's an emergency meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the Moretti Holdings office. Tell them it's regarding urgent matters that affect the company's future and their investments. Tell them attendance is mandatory. Marcus scanned the list, his eyes widening. Evelyn, these are some of the most powerful people in the city. I know. What's happening tomorrow at 9 a.m.? Evelyn met his eyes. Justice. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he folded the list and put it in his pocket. Consider it done. One more thing, Evelyn said. After you make those calls, I need you to take a vacation. Immediate. Out of the city. For at least a week. You're scaring me. Good, Evelyn said. You should be scared, but you should also trust me. Can you do that? Marcus nodded slowly. Always. Evelyn touched his hand briefly. Thank you for everything. I'll explain when this is over. She left him sitting in the coffee shop and headed to her next appointment, a meeting with her own board of directors at Cross Design Collective. Her company. The business she'd built from nothing over 12 years. The reputation she'd earned through talent and hard work and dedication. The legitimacy Lucien had been borrowing like a cheap suit. She'd called the emergency meeting that morning, and now her 5 board members sat around the conference table in her office, looking concerned. Thank you for coming on such short notice, Evelyn said. I'll get right to the point. I'm canceling the wedding. The room erupted. Evelyn, what happened? Are you sure? She held up a hand and they fell silent. The wedding is canceled because Lucien Moretti has been unfaithful, dishonest, and potentially criminal in ways that I'm only beginning to understand. Tomorrow morning, information will come out that will likely damage his reputation and possibly result in legal action. I wanted you to know in advance so that you can protect the company. Protect it how? Asked Sarah Chen, her CFO. Distance us from him completely. Any projects we're working on that involve Moretti Holdings or his properties, suspend them immediately. Any public association between Cross Design and Moretti Enterprises, sever it. I want our company's name completely separated from his before this explodes. What's going to explode? Asked David Martinez, her head of operations. The truth, Evelyn said simply. She spent the next hour briefing them on everything she could tell them without compromising Rebecca's strategy. The affair, the financial irregularities, the possibility of federal investigation. By the time she finished, they looked shell-shocked. I'm sorry, Evelyn said quietly. I know some of this reflects badly on my judgment. I brought him into our world. I vouched for him. That was a mistake, and I take full responsibility. You were lied to, Sarah said firmly. That's not your fault. It's my responsibility, though, Evelyn replied, which is why I'm handling it. Tomorrow, when everything comes out, I want this company to be clean, untainted, ready to move forward without the shadow of Lucien Moretti hanging over us. What about you? David asked. What happens to you in all this? Evelyn smiled. It was a cold smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. I survive, she said. That's what I do. The meeting ended at 4. Evelyn had 3 hours before her dinner with Lucian. She spent them in her office, alone, going through files and emails and documents from the past 6 years. Every interaction with Lucian, every introduction she'd made, every door she'd opened, building a timeline, creating a record, making sure that when this was over, there would be no question about who had been the victim and who had been the predator. At 6:30, she changed into the dress she'd brought, elegant navy blue, expensive but not flashy, the kind of outfit that said she was serious but not confrontational. At 7, she met Lucien at Marea, the Italian restaurant in Central Park South where they'd had their first date 6 years ago. He was already there, waiting at their usual table, looking polished and powerful in a charcoal suit. When he saw her, he stood and smiled that devastating smile that had made her believe in fairy tales. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing her cheek. "Thank you." Evelyn settled into her chair and accepted the wine he'd already ordered. "It feels strange, doesn't it, being here, where it all started?" "Nostalgic," Lucien agreed. "I remember that first night. You were so poised, so confident. I knew immediately you were different from anyone I'd ever met." "Different how?" "Special," he said. "The kind of woman who could change everything." The kind of woman you could use, Evelyn thought, but she smiled and raised her glass. "To change," she said. "To us," Lucien corrected, clinking his glass against hers. They ordered. Made small talk about the wedding preparations, about the honeymoon he'd planned to Positano, about the future they would supposedly build together. Evelyn played her part perfectly. The excited bride, the devoted partner, the woman who had no idea her world was about to detonate. Over dessert, she pulled out the documents. "These are the corporate restructuring agreements," she said, sliding the folder across the table. "My lawyer says they're straightforward, just formalizing your control position and protecting against any future challenges." Lucian flipped through them, his expression casual. "Looks standard." "It is, but I'd feel better if you reviewed them with me, just so I understand what I'm signing." Because that was the game. Make him think she was the one being protected. Make him think this was about her peace of mind, not his destruction. They went through the documents page by page. Evelyn asked intelligent questions that made her sound engaged, but not suspicious. Lucien answered them with the easy confidence of a man who thought he controlled every variable. "This clause here," Evelyn said, pointing to a section Rebecca had crafted specifically to sound innocuous. "About voting rights and control positions. Can you explain it?" "It's just legal language," Lucien said dismissively. "Basically says that you'll have a minority stake in the holding company, but operational control stays with me and the board. Standard stuff for this kind of structure." "And this part? About contingent vesting?" "That's if we ever divorce," Lucien said, and something flickered in his eyes. "Which we won't. But lawyers like to plan for every scenario." "Of course," Evelyn said softly. "I just want to make sure I understand. If something happened, if we separated, what would happen to the company?" "You'd keep your shares but lose your voting rights," Lucien said. "The company would continue operating under existing management. You'd still benefit financially, but you wouldn't have control." "That seems fair," Evelyn said, though her heart was racing. Because she knew what he didn't, that buried in the real documents waiting in Rebecca's office. The terms were very different. "Is there anything else?" Lucien asked, glancing at his watch. "Just one more thing." Evelyn pulled out another document. This one real. "I had my lawyer draft a codicil to the prenup, just a minor addition." Lucien's eyes sharpened. "What kind of addition?" "An infidelity clause," Evelyn said calmly. "I know it's probably unnecessary. I trust you completely. But my lawyer insisted. Said it's standard for high-profile marriages. If either of us is unfaithful, it triggers certain protections and remedies." She watched his face carefully, saw the momentary tension, the quick calculation. "That seems adversarial," he said slowly. "It's protective," Evelyn corrected. "For both of us. If I ever betrayed you, you'd have recourse, and vice versa. It's just a formality." "What kind of recourse?" "Adjusted asset division, accelerated vesting of certain rights, the kind of things that would protect the injured party." "Like," she paused, Again, it's just what my lawyer recommended. If you're uncomfortable with it— No, Lucien said quickly, too quickly. If your lawyer thinks it's necessary, we should include it. Because he thought he was untouchable. Thought his affair with Lila was so well hidden, so carefully compartmentalized that there was no risk. Thought Evelyn was too trusting, too in love, too naive to ever discover the truth. He picked up the pen Evelyn offered and signed the codicil without reading the fine print, just like he'd signed the original prenup without reading Rebecca's carefully planted clauses, just like he was signing away his empire and didn't even know it. Evelyn watched his signature flow across the page and felt something cold and sharp settle in her chest. "Perfect," she said, taking the document back. "Thank you for being so understanding. I know it seems silly." "Nothing about protecting our future is silly," Lucien said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I love you, Evelyn. I want you to feel secure. In everything." His thumb stroked across her knuckles. The same gesture he'd made 1,000 times before, the same touch that used to make her feel cherished and safe. Now it just felt like proof that he was the best liar she'd ever met. "I love you too," she said, because it was expected, because she needed him to believe for 18 more hours that she was still his perfect, trusting, controllable bride. They finished dinner. Lucien paid the check with the Black American Express card that represented wealth and power and all the things he'd built on the foundation of her reputation. Outside the restaurant, he pulled her close and kissed her deeply. 40 hours, he murmured against her lips. "And then you're mine forever." "Forever," Evelyn echoed. She let him put her in a car, let him believe she was going home to dream about their wedding. Instead, she directed the driver to Rebecca's office. It was nearly midnight when she arrived, but Rebecca was still there, surrounded by documents and a grim-faced woman Evelyn had never met. "This is Catherine Walsh," Rebecca said, "forensic accountant and the best in the business at following money through impossible labyrinths." Catherine looked up from her laptop. She had sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the exhausted expression of someone who'd been working for 20 straight hours. "Your fiancé is a very creative criminal," she said without preamble. "Also spectacularly arrogant. He didn't even try very hard to hide it." "What did you find?" Evelyn asked. Catherine turned her laptop around. The screen showed a web of companies and accounts and transactions that looked like abstract art. "Money laundering," Catherine said. "Classic structure. Dirty money comes in through cash businesses, restaurants, nightclubs, real estate services, gets mixed with legitimate income, flows through shell companies, emerges clean on the other side as real estate investments and development projects." "How much money?" "Conservatively, 40 million over the past 3 years. Possibly more if we dig deeper." The number made Evelyn's head spin. "Where's it coming from?" "That's where it gets interesting," Catherine said. "Some of it appears to be classic organized crime revenue, protection rackets, illegal gambling, that kind of thing. But there's a bigger stream that looks like it might be coming from international sources. Russian, possibly. Or Eastern European." "Lucien has business partners in those regions," Evelyn said slowly. "He told me they were real estate investors." "They might be," Catherine said, "but they're also moving money in patterns consistent with oligarch wealth extraction, taking money out of their home countries, cleaning it through U.S. real estate, making it legitimate." Rebecca leaned forward. "Here's what matters for our purposes. Moretti has been using his relationship with you, your reputation, your connections, to gain access to legitimate investors and financial institutions that would never have touched him otherwise. Your presence made him respectable, made people trust him, and he used that trust to facilitate crimes." "Can we prove it?" Evelyn asked. "We can prove enough to trigger a serious federal investigation," Catherine said. "The evidence in these accounts combined with the shell company structures and the international money movements, it's a roadmap for any prosecutor. How long before the authorities would move on this if it was reported? With evidence this clear? Days? Maybe a week?" Evelyn looked at Rebecca. "So we have to do this tomorrow." "We do this tomorrow," Rebecca confirmed. "Before he marries you. Before any of his rights vest. Before he has a chance to realize what's happening and move assets or destroy evidence." "What about Lila?" Evelyn asked. "She's pregnant. If this comes out—" "I've been thinking about that," Rebecca said. "We need to offer her protection, Immunity, possibly, in exchange for her testimony. She's a victim too, even if she doesn't realize it yet. She gave us the evidence, Evelyn said. That should count for something. It will. I'll reach out to the prosecutors we're working with. Make sure she's protected. Rebecca paused. You know this is going to be ugly, right? Tomorrow, when everything comes out. It's going to be public and brutal, and there will be cameras and reporters and questions you won't want to answer. I know. And you're sure you want to do this? Once we start, there's no walking it back. Evelyn thought about Lucien's face across the dinner table. The easy lies. The casual manipulation. The absolute certainty that he had won. She thought about Lila, pregnant and terrified and trapped in a life Lucien had designed for her. She thought about all the women who would come after them if someone didn't stop him. I'm sure, she said. Rebecca nodded. Then let's finish this. They worked through the night, refining the presentation, organizing the evidence, coordinating timing. By the time the sun started to rise over Manhattan, they had a plan. At 9 a.m. tomorrow, Lucien would walk into what he thought was a routine board meeting. Instead, he would walk into a room full of investors, lawyers, federal agents, and the woman he'd underestimated, and his empire would fall in a single devastating hour. Evelyn left Rebecca's office at 6 a.m. She went home to shower and change, moving through the apartment she'd shared with Lucien like a ghost walking through her old life. His things were everywhere, his coffee mug in the sink, his jacket over the chair, his presence in every room like a stain she couldn't wait to bleach clean. She packed a bag. Not much, just enough for a few days, because after today she wouldn't be coming back here. At 7:30, her phone rang. Marcus. The calls are made, he said. Everyone confirmed. 9 a.m. tomorrow at Moretti Holdings. Thank you, Evelyn said. Now get out of the city. Already at the airport, but Evelyn? Yes? Whatever you're doing, be careful. It's too late for careful, Evelyn said, but I'll be smart. She ended the call and looked at herself in the mirror. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, a crimson suit that was both powerful and beautiful, the color of blood and victory. Tomorrow, she would wear it into battle. Tonight, she had one final performance. At 8 p.m., Lucien went in called. Where are you? I thought we were spending the night before the wedding together. I'm at my office, Evelyn said. Last-minute emergency with a client project. I'm so sorry. Can it wait? Unfortunately, no, but I'll see you tomorrow. At the altar. Tomorrow, Lucien said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. When you become mine. When everything changes, Evelyn agreed. She hung up and sat in her office, surrounded by the empire she'd built with her own hands, her own talent, her own reputation that no one could take from her. And she thought about tomorrow, about justice delivered in a boardroom instead of a cathedral, about a wedding that would never happen and a future that would be written in legal documents instead of vows, about the moment when Lucien Moretti would finally understand that the woman he'd treated like a tool had just become his executioner. Evelyn smiled. 33 hours until the wedding that would never be. 33 hours until she destroyed the man who'd tried to destroy her. She was ready. The hours crawled by like wounded animals. Evelyn didn't sleep. She sat in her office through the night, watching the city lights blur and sharpen as exhaustion played tricks with her vision. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Lucien's face, the smile he'd given her over dinner, so confident, so utterly certain of his victory. By the time dawn broke over Manhattan, she'd rehearsed what she would say 100 times, every word, every pause, every devastating revelation timed for maximum impact. At 6 a.m., Rebecca called. The prosecutors are in, she said without preamble. They've reviewed everything. They want to move forward. How soon? They'll have agents at the meeting. Federal, they'll be watching, recording, gathering evidence. If Moretti says anything incriminating, and men like him always do when they're cornered, they'll have grounds for immediate action. Evelyn's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her desk. What about Lila? I spoke with her an hour ago, offered her immunity in exchange for cooperation. She's terrified, but she agreed. She'll testify if needed. Where is she now? Safe house or federal protection? The prosecutors want to make sure Moretti can't reach her before this goes down. Rebecca paused. How are you holding up? I'm fine, Evelyn lied. You don't have to do this, you know. We have enough evidence. The prosecutors could move without you being there. No, Evelyn said firmly. I need to be there. I need to see his face when he realizes what I've done. Okay, Rebecca said quietly. Then I'll see you at 8:30. We'll go in together. Evelyn ended the call and stood, her body stiff from sitting in the same position for hours. She walked to the window and looked out at the city waking up below her. Somewhere out there, Lucian was probably still sleeping, dreaming of power and legitimacy and the wedding that would cement his place in a world that had once shut him out. He had no idea that world was about to slam the door in his face so hard it would shatter every bone. At 7 a.m., Evelyn's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. So excited for tomorrow, darling. Your father and I will be at the cathedral by noon. We love you. Evelyn stared at the message for a long moment. Her parents, the 500 guests, the cathedral reservation, the orchestra, the flowers, all of it would have to be canceled, explained, managed. But first she had to destroy the groom. She texted back, change of plans. I'll call you later. I love you too. Then she silenced her phone and went to change into the crimson suit. The Moretti Holdings office occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in Midtown. Evelyn had been here dozens of times. For meetings, for celebrations, for the carefully orchestrated events where Lucien showed off his beautiful, accomplished fiancée to investors who needed to believe he was legitimate. She'd always felt proud walking through those doors, proud to be his partner, proud of what they were building together. Now, stepping out of the car at 8:30 with Rebecca beside her, she felt nothing but cold determination. Ready? Rebecca asked. Evelyn adjusted the collar of her crimson jacket. Let's end this. They took the elevator to the 14th floor. The receptionist looked up in surprise when she saw them. Ms. Cross, I didn't know you'd be at the meeting this morning. Last-minute addition, Evelyn said smoothly. Is everyone here? Most of them. Mr. Moretti is in his office. The others are gathering in the main conference room. Perfect, Evelyn said. We'll wait in there. Well, the conference room was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a table that could seat 30, technology for presentations built into the walls. Evelyn had helped design this space 2 years ago, back when she still believed she was building a future instead of a facade. Now she stood at the head of that table and watched the board members and investors file in, their expressions ranging from curious to annoyed at being summoned on such short notice. She recognized all of them, had met most of them at galas and fundraisers, had vouched for Lucien with her presence, her reputation, her assurance that he was one of the good ones. They were about to learn how wrong she'd been. At 8:50, 2 men in dark suits entered the room. They didn't introduce themselves, but Evelyn knew who they were. Federal agents. Rebecca had briefed her. They took seats at the back of the room, quiet and watchful. At 8:55, Lucien walked in. He was dressed impeccably as always. Navy suit, crisp white shirt, the confidence of a man who owned every room he entered. When he saw Evelyn standing at the head of the table in her crimson suit, his expression flickered with surprise. Evelyn? What are you doing here? I called the meeting, she said calmly. Lucian's eyes narrowed. You called. What is this about? Why don't you sit down? Evelyn gestured to the chair at the opposite end of the table. We have a lot to discuss. For a moment she thought he might refuse, might demand answers, might try to take control of the situation the way he always did. But he was surrounded by his board members, his investors, his business partners, all watching, all waiting. So he sat. This better be good, he said, his voice light but his eyes cold. We have a wedding to prepare for. About that, Evelyn said. She picked up a remote and activated the screen behind her. I'm afraid there's been a change of plans. The first image appeared on the screen, a text message, Lucien to Lila. Can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible. The room went very quiet. Lucian's face drained of color. Evelyn, what the hell? Please don't interrupt, Evelyn said. We have a lot to cover. She clicked to the next image. Another text, then another, dozens of them, each one more damning than the last. For those of you who don't know, Evelyn said conversationally, these are messages between my fiancé and my assistant, Lila Mercer. They've been having an affair for the past 14 months. This is a private matter, Lucien said, standing. His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "This is not appropriate. Sit down, Mr. Moretti," Rebecca said from her position beside Evelyn, "or we'll have security remove you." "A security? This is my company." "Actually," Rebecca said, "that's debatable, which is why we're here." Lucian looked around the room, at his board members who were staring at the screen in shock, at his investors whose expressions had gone cold and calculating, at the two federal agents sitting at the back, taking notes. Slowly, he sat back down. "Thank you," Evelyn said. She clicked to the next slide. Financial records, wire transfers, shell company structures. The affair itself wouldn't normally concern the board, of course, except that Lucien has been using company resources to support his mistress. This apartment in Brooklyn, purchased through a shell company funded by transfers from Moretti Holdings accounts. Monthly deposits into Ms. Mercer's personal account. Expenses charged to corporate cards and disguised as business costs. "That's a lie," Lucian said. "Is it?" Evelyn clicked through more documents. "These are bank statements, transfer records, lease agreements, all verified by our forensic accountant." She gestured to Catherine Walsh, who'd entered quietly during the presentation and now stood near the door. "Ms. Walsh has been examining Moretti Holdings' financial structures for the past 36 hours. Would you like to share what you found, Catherine?" Catherine stepped forward, opening a laptop. Moretti Holdings has been operating as a money laundering vehicle for approximately 3 years. Cash from illegal operations flows through various businesses, restaurants, nightclubs, service companies, gets mixed with legitimate income, and emerges clean through real estate developments. "This is absurd," Lucian said, but his voice had lost its edge. He was calculating now, trying to figure out how much they knew, how much they could prove. "Is it?" Catherine clicked through a presentation of her own. Charts showing money flows, timelines, connections between companies. "We've traced approximately $40 million moving through these structures, some from domestic criminal operations, some from international sources that appear to be Russian or Eastern European oligarch wealth." One of the board members, Thomas Caldwell, a venture capitalist who'd invested heavily in Lucien's last development, stood up. "Are you telling me," he said slowly, "that my investment is tied up in money laundering?" "We're telling you," Rebecca said, "that Moretti Holdings has been operating as a criminal enterprise while using legitimate investments and investors to create a facade of respectability." The room exploded, board members shouting questions, investors demanding answers. Lucien trying to talk over everyone, his voice rising. Evelyn let it go for exactly 30 seconds. Then she picked up a small gavel, one she'd brought specifically for this purpose, and struck it against the table. The room fell silent. "There's more," Evelyn said quietly. She clicked to another slide. The prenuptial agreement, the corporate documents Lucien had signed at dinner 2 nights ago, the codicil with the infidelity clause. "When Lucien and I got engaged," Evelyn said, "we signed a prenuptial agreement. That agreement included certain provisions about corporate control and voting rights. Specifically, upon our marriage, I would receive minority voting rights in Moretti Holdings." "Minority rights," Lucian said. "Nothing that affects control." "Correct," Evelyn agreed. However, the agreement also included a morality clause. In the event of infidelity or moral turpitude prior to marriage, certain provisions would be triggered. She could see Lucien's mind working, trying to remember what he'd signed, trying to figure out where the trap was. 2 nights ago, Evelyn continued, Lucien signed additional corporate restructuring documents, documents that formalized his control position contingent on the marriage proceeding as planned. "Standard corporate protection," Lucian said. "Standard," Evelyn agreed, except for one small detail. The documents include a provision that if the marriage is canceled due to violation of the morality clause, all contingent control positions are immediately voided. The color drained from Lucian's face as he finally understood. "You tricked me," he breathed. "I gave you documents to review," Evelyn said calmly. "You signed them without reading the fine print. That's not trickery. That's just carelessness." Rebecca stepped forward. "The morality clause has been triggered by evidence of Mr. Moretti's infidelity, which means his control position in Moretti Holdings is now void. And because his position was the linchpin holding together the voting structure, the whole thing collapses," Catherine finished. Other board members have contingent positions that vest based on different triggers. With Moretti's position voided, those triggers activate. The control structure fractures. No one has majority control anymore. Thomas Caldwell was staring at Lucien with undisguised fury. You structured the entire company to collapse if you couldn't keep your pants zipped? I structured it to protect my interests, Lucien shot back. This is a setup. She planned this. I planned to marry you, Evelyn said softly, until I discovered you were sleeping with my assistant, until I learned you'd been using me for years, my reputation, my contacts, my legitimacy, to build a criminal empire. She clicked to the final slide. Photos of Lucien and Lila together. Intimate, undeniable. Ms. Mercer is currently in federal protection, Evelyn said. She's provided extensive testimony about the affair, about the apartment you purchased for her, about the pregnancy. Pregnancy? Someone whispered. Lucian's hands were gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles had gone white. Where is she? Safe, Rebecca said. Somewhere you can't threaten her. Somewhere you can't manipulate her into staying quiet. I never threatened. Didn't you? Evelyn interrupted. She clicked the remote again. Audio began to play. Lucian's voice captured from the salon fitting room. She'll be my wife. Beautiful, accomplished, perfect for photographs. And you'll be mine in the ways that actually matter. Discreet, protected, cherished. Then Lila's voice. What happens after? Lucian's response. After the wedding, nothing changes. Evelyn will be my wife, and you'll be mine in the ways that actually matter. Evelyn watched Lucien's face as his own words condemned him. Watched the moment he realized that every careful lie, every calculated manipulation, every arrogant assumption that Evelyn was too trusting to see through him had been recorded, preserved, turned into evidence. That's enough, Lucian said, standing again. This meeting is over. Actually, said one of the federal agents from the back of the room, we'd like you to stay, Mr. Moretti. Everyone turned to look at the two men in dark suits. Who the hell are you? Lucian demanded. The taller agent pulled out credentials. Special Agent Michael Torres, FBI Financial Crimes Division. This is Special Agent David Kim. We've been monitoring this meeting with great interest. You have no authority here. We have a warrant, Agent Torres said calmly, to seize records related to potential money laundering and financial fraud. Ms. Walsh's analysis, combined with the evidence Ms. Cross has provided, gives us probable cause to investigate Moretti Holdings and all associated entities. This is harassment, Lucian said. I want my lawyer. That's your right, Agent Torres agreed, but I should inform you that we'll be executing the warrant regardless. Your cooperation would be appreciated, but isn't required. Lucien looked around the room, at his board members, who were already pulling out phones to call their own lawyers, at his investors, who were calculating how quickly they could distance themselves from a man under federal investigation, at Evelyn, standing at the head of the table in her crimson suit, watching his empire crumble. You'll regret this, he said to her. His voice was low, dangerous. You have no idea what you've done. I know exactly what I've done, Evelyn replied. I've stopped you from destroying anyone else the way you tried to destroy me. Destroy you? Lucien laughed, but there was no humor in it. I made you. Your little design business was nothing before I came along. I introduced you to real money, real power. You borrowed my legitimacy, Evelyn interrupted. You used my reputation to gain access to people who would never have trusted you otherwise. You wore my respectability like a costume while you committed crimes and betrayed every promise you ever made. I gave you everything. You gave me lies, Evelyn said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were blazing. 6 years of lies. Every I love you was strategic. Every promise was manipulation. Every moment I thought we were building something together, you were just using me to build your empire. And now you've destroyed that empire out of spite, Lucian shot back. Congratulations, Evelyn. You've won. But what exactly have you won? A canceled wedding? A reputation as the woman who couldn't keep her man? The pity of everyone who will whisper about how you weren't enough? Evelyn smiled. It was the coldest expression anyone in that room had ever seen. I've won my freedom, she said, and I've ensured that you'll face consequences for what you've done. That's enough. Agent Torres stepped forward. Mr. Moretti, we're going to need you to come with us. We have some questions about your business operations. Am I under arrest? Not at this time, but we strongly encourage your cooperation. Lucien looked at Evelyn one last time. This isn't over. Yes, Evelyn said quietly. It is. She watched as the federal agents escorted him from the room, watched as his board members immediately convened in hushed, urgent conversations about damage control and legal liability, watched as his investors began the careful process of extracting themselves from what was clearly about to become a very public scandal. Thomas Caldwell approached her as the room emptied. I owe you an apology, he said. I should have looked deeper before investing, should have questioned. He was very good at seeming legitimate, Evelyn said. That was his gift, making people believe he was something he wasn't. What will you do now? Evelyn looked around the conference room, the space she'd helped design, in a building she'd helped fill with investors who'd trusted her judgment. I'm going to rebuild my reputation, she said. Make sure everyone knows I was a victim of his deception, not a participant in his crimes. And then I'm going to make sure my company is stronger than ever. Thomas nodded. If there's anything I can do to help, there is, Evelyn said. When this becomes public, and it will very soon, I need people who know the truth to speak up, to make it clear that Moretti manipulated everyone, including me, that his crimes were his own. Consider it done, Thomas said. After he left, Evelyn stood alone in the conference room with Rebecca and Catherine. You did it, Rebecca said quietly. We did it, Evelyn corrected. I couldn't have... Her voice cracked suddenly. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting for control. Rebecca crossed to her and gripped her shoulder. You can break now. It's okay. You've earned it. But Evelyn shook her head. Not yet. There's still... She checked her watch. In 3 hours, 500 people are going to arrive at St. Patrick's Cathedral expecting a wedding. I can handle the logistics, Rebecca said. Cancellations, explanations. No, Evelyn said. I need to do it myself. She pulled out her phone and started making calls. First her parents. Then the wedding planner. Then the cathedral, the florist, the caterer, the orchestra. Each conversation was harder than the last. Each required her to explain, briefly and with as much dignity as she could manage, that the wedding was canceled due to circumstances beyond her control. Her mother cried. Her father demanded to know what Lucien had done. The wedding planner was shocked. The vendors were sympathetic but firm about cancellation fees. By the time Evelyn finished the last call, it was 11:30, 90 minutes until the ceremony that would never happen. One more thing, she said to Rebecca. The reception, the plaza. 500 guests expecting dinner and dancing. What about it? Evelyn's mind was racing. How quickly could we change the purpose of the event? Rebecca raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? Those people were invited to celebrate what they thought was my happily ever after, Evelyn said slowly. What if instead we invited them to witness my survival? Not a wedding reception, a press conference. A chance for me to control the narrative before Lucien's lawyers start spinning this to make him look like the victim. That's bold, Catherine said. That's necessary, Evelyn replied. By tomorrow morning, this will be all over the news. Mafia Boss arrested, society wedding canceled. If I don't speak first, someone else will tell my story for me. Rebecca was nodding. We could do it. The space is already reserved. We just need to change the setup, fewer tables, more seating, a podium. Make it happen, Evelyn said, and send a message to everyone who was invited to the wedding. Tell them there's been a change of plans. Tell them if they want to know what really happened, they should come to the plaza at 7 p.m. They'll come, Rebecca said. Everyone loves a scandal. Then let's give them one, Evelyn said, on my terms. She spent the next few hours at Rebecca's office preparing, writing the statement she would read, anticipating questions, coordinating with the prosecutors to make sure she didn't say anything that would compromise their investigation. At 5 p.m., her phone started buzzing with texts from friends, family, former colleagues. Everyone who'd heard the wedding was canceled, everyone demanding to know what happened. Evelyn didn't answer any of them. She would answer all of them at once, in front of everyone, with the truth. At 6:30, she arrived at the plaza. The ballroom that was supposed to host her wedding reception had been transformed. The round tables were gone. In their place were rows of chairs facing a small stage with a podium. Cameras were set up in the back. Rebecca had invited select members of the press, ensuring the story would be covered on Evelyn's terms. The flowers were still there, the same Ecuadorian roses and French peonies that were supposed to decorate her celebration. But now they framed what looked more like a corporate presentation than a party. People were already arriving. Evelyn watched from a private room off the main ballroom as 500 confused, curious, scandal-hungry guests filed in and took their seats. Her parents found her at 6:45. Her mother's eyes were red from crying. Her father looked like he wanted to murder someone. "Sweetheart," her mother said, pulling her into a fierce hug. "What happened? What did he do?" "Everything," Evelyn said quietly. "He did everything wrong, and I'm about to make sure everyone knows it." You don't have to do this," her father said. "You don't owe these people an explanation. You can just disappear for a while. Let the gossip die down." "If I disappear, the gossip never dies," Evelyn said. "It just gets worse. People will make up stories. They'll say I was complicit in his crimes. They'll say I knew and didn't care. They'll destroy my reputation while trying to salvage his." She shook her head. "I need to speak first. I need to control what people believe." Her mother gripped her hands. "What are you going to tell them?" "The truth," Evelyn said simply. At 7 p.m. exactly, Evelyn walked onto the stage. The room fell silent, 500 pairs of eyes fixed on her. She was still wearing the crimson suit. Her hair was still perfect. Her makeup was still flawless. She looked exactly like a woman who was supposed to be getting married, except she was standing at a podium instead of an altar, and her expression was carved from ice instead of glowing with joy. "Thank you all for coming," she said. Her voice was amplified by the microphone, steady and clear. "I know this isn't the event you were expecting. 2 hours ago, I should have been walking down the aisle at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Instead, I'm standing here to tell you why that wedding will never happen." She paused, letting the silence build. 3 days ago, I discovered that my fiancé, Lucien Moretti, has been having an affair with my assistant for the past 14 months. She's pregnant with his child. Gasps rippled through the crowd. That discovery led me to investigate further. What I found was worse than infidelity. I found evidence that Lucien has been using our relationship, using my reputation, my contacts, my legitimacy to facilitate financial crimes, money laundering, fraud, possibly worse. The room erupted in whispers. Evelyn waited for it to quiet. This morning, I presented that evidence to Lucien's board of directors, his investors, and federal agents from the FBI. As of this afternoon, Moretti Holdings is under investigation for financial crimes. Lucien Moretti is cooperating with federal authorities. More whispers. Evelyn could see phones coming out, people texting, recording, posting to social media. Good. Let them spread the story. Her story. "I want to be very clear about something," Evelyn continued. "I was deceived. I was manipulated. I was used by a man who saw me as a tool to legitimize his criminal enterprise. For 6 years, I believed I was building a future with someone I loved. What I was actually doing was providing cover for someone who never loved me at all." Her voice cracked slightly on the last words, but she pushed through. "I'm standing here tonight because I want you to hear the truth from me, not from tabloids, not from Lucien's lawyers, not from people who will try to spin this story to protect him or profit from the scandal. I want you to know that I had no knowledge of his criminal activities, that I cooperated fully with federal investigators the moment I discovered evidence of wrongdoing, and that I will continue to cooperate as this investigation proceeds." She gripped the podium, steadying herself. "I also want you to know that I'm not ashamed. I'm not hiding. Yes, I was fooled by someone who was very good at lying, but that doesn't make me complicit. It makes me a victim, and I refuse to be victimized twice. Once by him, and again by a society that wants to blame me for not seeing through deception that was designed to be invisible." Evelyn looked out at the crowd, at her parents, crying in the front row, at her colleagues from Cross Design Collective, their faces fierce with support, at society figures who'd known her for years, who were nodding in understanding. "So here's what happens now," she said. "I rebuild. I go back to my company, my work, my life. I help prosecutors build their case against Lucien Moretti. I make sure that what he did to me doesn't happen to anyone else. And I move forward, not as Lucien Moretti's victim, but as Evelyn Cross, a woman who survived betrayal and came out stronger. She paused one last time. Thank you for being here tonight, for bearing witness, for hearing my truth. This wasn't the celebration I planned, but it's the one I needed. She stepped back from the podium. The room was silent for 3 heartbeats. Then someone started clapping. Evelyn's mother. Then her father joined in. Then her colleagues. Then more people, until the entire ballroom was applauding. Evelyn stood on the stage and let the sound wash over her. It wasn't the same as walking down an aisle toward forever. It wasn't the same as saying vows and promising to love someone who actually loved her back. But it was something. It was witnesses to her survival. Proof that she hadn't been destroyed by the man who'd tried to destroy her. It was enough. The applause faded, but the cameras kept rolling. Evelyn stepped down from the stage and was immediately surrounded by reporters who'd been given access by Rebecca. Questions came from every direction, a wall of sound that threatened to overwhelm her carefully maintained composure. Ms. Cross, how long have you known about the affair? Were you aware of any criminal activity before this week? What will you do if Mr. Moretti tries to retaliate? Is it true his mistress is under federal protection? Rebecca materialized at Evelyn's elbow, her lawyer's instincts sharp. Ms. Cross will take 3 questions, she announced firmly. Then she needs privacy to process this with her family. Evelyn pointed to a woman from the Times. You first. When did you first suspect something was wrong? 3 days ago, Evelyn said. I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. Everything I discovered after that happened in 72 hours. That's remarkably fast, another reporter called out. How did you gather so much evidence so quickly? I had help from people who believed me, Evelyn replied. My attorney, a forensic accountant, and a young woman who was brave enough to tell the truth, even though it terrified her. She could see Lila's name being typed into phones, searches already beginning. The story would find her eventually, but at least she was safe, protected by federal agents who understood what happened when powerful men felt cornered. Final question, Rebecca said. A reporter from CNN spoke up. Do you regret your relationship with Lucien Moretti? If you could go back, would you change anything? Evelyn was quiet for a moment, considering. The ballroom had gone silent again, everyone waiting for her answer. I regret trusting someone who didn't deserve it, she said finally. I regret not seeing the signs that were probably there all along. But I don't regret believing in love. I don't regret being the kind of person who sees the best in people instead of assuming the worst. What happened to me wasn't my fault. It was his choice, his crime, his moral failure. She paused. So no, I wouldn't change who I am. I would just choose better next time. The reporters erupted with follow-up questions, but Rebecca was already steering Evelyn away, cutting through the crowd toward the private room where her parents waited. Her mother was pacing. Her father stood by the window, hands clenched into fists, looking like he was barely restraining himself from hunting down Lucien personally. That was incredibly brave, her mother said, pulling Evelyn into another embrace. But sweetheart, you look exhausted. When was the last time you slept? I don't remember, Evelyn admitted. Then we're taking you home, her father said. Our home. Not that apartment you shared with that. He bit off whatever word he'd been about to use. You're not staying in his space another night. Evelyn started to protest, then realized she didn't have the energy. Okay, she said quietly. Just I need to speak to Rebecca first. Her parents nodded and stepped out, giving her privacy. Rebecca was on her phone, already managing the aftermath. When she saw Evelyn's expression, she ended the call immediately. What do you need? What happens now? Evelyn asked. Legally, with Lucien, with everything. Rebecca gestured for her to sit. The federal investigation will take time, months probably. They'll trace every transaction, interview everyone connected to his operations. Catherine's analysis gave them a roadmap, but they'll need to build a case that can survive the lawyers Moretti will hire. Will he go to prison? If they can prove money laundering and fraud, yes. Probably 5 to 10 years depending on how much he cooperates and what plea deal his lawyers negotiate. And the company, Moretti Holdings? That's more complicated, Rebecca said. The corporate structure is fractured now that his control position is void. The board will likely vote to remove him entirely, install new leadership, try to distance the legitimate business operations from the criminal ones. Some of it might survive. Most of it will probably collapse. And his investors? The people who trusted him? They'll lose money, Rebecca said bluntly. Some of them might have legal recourse if they can prove fraud in how their investments were solicited, but most will just take the loss and move on. That's the risk of investing in someone whose legitimacy was always questionable. Evelyn thought about Thomas Caldwell and the others who'd believed in Lucien, partly because she'd vouched for him. I led them to him. My reputation made them trust him. You were lied to, Rebecca said firmly, just like they were. You're not responsible for his crimes, Evelyn. Don't let anyone make you carry that guilt. Oh, what about Lila? What happens to her? She cooperates, she testifies if needed, and she gets immunity. The prosecutors see her as a victim too, young, manipulated, trapped by pregnancy and financial dependence. After this is over, she'll probably disappear, change her name, start over somewhere Moretti can't find her. She should, Evelyn said quietly. Start over. She deserves that chance. Rebecca studied her. You're being remarkably generous about a woman who slept with your fiancé. She's 26 years old and pregnant with the child of a man who would have destroyed her the moment she became inconvenient, Evelyn said. I'm angry at what she did, but I also understand that Lucien is very good at making women believe what he needs them to believe. She was another victim, just a different kind. That's a very evolved perspective. I've had 72 hours to evolve, Evelyn said dryly. Ask me again in a month when I'm not running on adrenaline and spite. Rebecca laughed despite the circumstances. What about you? What happens to Evelyn Cross now? I go back to work, Evelyn said. I rebuild my reputation. I make sure Cross Design Collective survives this. She paused. I assume there will be questions. People wondering how much I knew, whether I was complicit. There will be, Rebecca confirmed, which is why your statement tonight was crucial. You controlled the narrative before anyone else could. You positioned yourself as a victim who took action, not an accomplice who got caught. But some people won't believe that. Some people never will, Rebecca agreed. They'll say you should have known, should have seen the signs, should have been smarter. Those people aren't worth your energy. Evelyn stood, smoothing down her crimson jacket. Then I'll focus on the people who matter. My clients, my team, the people who actually know me. That's the right call, Rebecca said. And Evelyn, you did something extraordinary these past 3 days. You discovered betrayal, and instead of falling apart, you built a case. You protected yourself and helped bring down someone who was genuinely dangerous. That takes strength most people don't have. I didn't feel strong, Evelyn admitted. I felt terrified the entire time. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Rebecca said. It's acting despite it. You were terrified and you did it anyway. That's the definition of brave. Evelyn left the plaza through a service entrance to avoid the reporters still lingering in the main lobby. Her parents' car was waiting, her mother in the back seat, her father at the wheel. She slid in beside her mother and let herself be pulled close, finally allowing exhaustion to show on her face. Where are we going? She asked. The Carlisle, her father said. I booked a suite. Figured you needed somewhere neutral, somewhere that isn't connected to him. Evelyn nodded gratefully. The thought of going back to the West Village apartment, to rooms still filled with Lucien's presence, made her stomach turn. The suite at the Carlisle was beautiful, elegant and quiet, far above the chaos of the city below. Her mother had already arranged for clothes to be brought over from Evelyn's office, along with toiletries and everything else she might need. I'm going to run you a bath, her mother announced. You're going to soak for at least an hour. Then you're going to eat something, I don't care if you're not hungry, and then you're going to sleep for 12 hours straight. Mom, I can't just… There are things I need to handle. They can wait, her mother said firmly. The world will keep spinning without you micromanaging it for one night. Right now you need to take care of yourself. Evelyn wanted to argue, but the truth was she was so tired she could barely think straight. The adrenaline that had carried her through the past 72 hours was finally draining away, leaving her hollow and shaking. Okay, she whispered. The bath was exactly what she needed. Evelyn sank into the hot water and finally let herself cry. Not the controlled 3-minute breakdown she'd allowed herself days ago, but the kind of crying that came from somewhere deep and wounded and betrayed. She cried for the 6 years she'd wasted on someone who never loved her, for the future she'd imagined that was never real, for the version of herself who'd believed in fairy tales and happy endings and men who changed for love. She cried until there were no tears left, until the bathwater had gone lukewarm and her eyes were swollen and her throat was raw. Then she got out, dried off, and put on the soft pajamas her mother had left on the counter. When she emerged from the bathroom, she found her parents in the suite's living room. Her father was on the phone with someone, his voice low and angry. Her mother was setting out food from room service. "I don't care what his lawyers say," her father was saying. "If he tries to contact my daughter, if he so much as looks in her direction, I will make sure every society connection we have knows exactly what kind of man he is. No, I'm not threatening him. I'm promising him." He ended the call and looked up to see Evelyn standing in the doorway. "That was Moretti's attorney," he said. "Apparently Lucien wants to speak with you, wants to explain. I told them to go to hell." "Good," Evelyn said. She sat down at the table, looking at the food without appetite. "I have nothing to say to him." "He'll try again," her father warned. "Men like that always do. They think they can talk their way out of anything." "Let him try," Evelyn said. "I'm done listening." She forced herself to eat a few bites of the soup her mother had ordered. It tasted like nothing, but she swallowed it anyway because her mother was watching with worried eyes. "The press is already going crazy," her mother said quietly. "It's all over social media. The story is trending. People are—" She paused. "Most people are supportive. They're calling you brave. But there are also people saying horrible things." "Don't read the comments," Evelyn said automatically. "I'm not. But you should know they're out there, people questioning your judgment, suggesting you must have known something. A few are even claiming you're just a scorned woman trying to destroy a successful man." Evelyn's hands tightened around her spoon. "Rebecca warned me. Some people will never believe I was innocent in this." "Those people are idiots," her father said flatly. Despite everything, Evelyn smiled. "Thanks, Dad. I'm serious. Anyone who knows you have integrity. The people who matter will stand by you. The rest can—" He glanced at his wife. "Can think whatever they want." Evelyn's phone buzzed. She'd silenced it hours ago, but the vibrations kept coming. Texts, calls, emails. The world demanding her attention, her explanation, her energy. She picked it up and scrolled through the notifications. Messages from friends expressing shock and support. Former colleagues asking if she needed anything. Clients reassuring her that their contracts with Cross Design Collective would continue. And one message that made her breath catch. From Lila. "I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover what I did to you, but I'm grateful for what you did for me. You saved my life. And my baby's life. Thank you." Evelyn stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, "Take care of yourself, both of you. Start over and don't look back." She hit send and immediately blocked the number, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Lila was part of a chapter of her life that needed to close. The young woman deserved a fresh start, and Evelyn deserved boundaries that protected her from any reminder of Lucien's betrayal. "Who was that?" her mother asked. "Lila," Evelyn said, saying thank you for helping her. Her mother's expression hardened. "That takes nerve." "She's young and scared and about to be a single mother," Evelyn said. "I don't forgive what she did. But I understand that Lucien manipulated her just like he manipulated me, just in different ways." "You're kinder than I would be," her mother said. "I'm practical," Evelyn corrected. "Holding on to anger at her would only hurt me. She's not worth my energy. He's not worth my energy. I need to save it for rebuilding." She finished as much of the soup as she could manage, then let her mother guide her to the bedroom. The bed was enormous and soft, and Evelyn sank into it feeling like she might never be able to get back up. "Sleep," her mother said, kissing her forehead. "We'll be right outside if you need anything." Evelyn closed her eyes and expected to lie awake for hours, her mind racing through everything that had happened, everything that was still to come. Instead, she fell asleep in seconds, exhausted beyond measure. She woke 16 hours later to afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows and her phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The confrontation, the press conference, The end of everything she'd thought her life would be. She checked her phone. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of text messages, her email inbox overflowing. One message stood out, flagged urgent by her assistant Marcus. Turn on the news. Now. Evelyn grabbed the remote and turned on the television, flipping to CNN. Her own face filled the screen. A photo from last night's press conference, her expression fierce and controlled in her crimson suit. The chyron below read, "Socialite exposes fiancé's criminal empire hours before wedding." The anchor's voice filled the room. In a stunning turn of events, design executive Evelyn Cross canceled her society wedding yesterday after discovering her fiancé, real estate developer Lucien Moretti, was not only having an affair but allegedly running a sophisticated money laundering operation. Cross went public with her allegations at what was supposed to be her wedding reception, turning the celebration into a press conference that has captivated the nation. The screen cut to footage from last night, Evelyn on stage, her voice steady as she detailed Lucien's crimes. The camera caught everything, her controlled grief, her righteous anger, the moment when the audience erupted in applause. Federal authorities have confirmed they're investigating Moretti Holdings for financial crimes, the anchor continued. Sources close to the investigation say the evidence Cross provided was instrumental in securing warrants to seize company records. Moretti's attorney issued a statement denying all allegations and claiming his client is the victim of a vindictive ex-fiancé. However, several former business associates have already come forward to corroborate Cross's claims. On the screen showed Thomas Caldwell being interviewed. "Evelyn Cross is a woman of impeccable integrity," he was saying. "If she says Moretti deceived her, I believe her completely. I invested in his company partly because of her involvement. Now I understand we were all being used." Evelyn's mother appeared in the doorway. "You're awake. How do you feel?" "Strange," Evelyn admitted. "Like I'm watching someone else's life implode on television." It's all anyone is talking about," her mother said. "Your phone has been ringing constantly. Rebecca called 4 times. She says the prosecutors want to meet with you today." "What time is it?" 3 in the afternoon. You slept through breakfast and lunch." Evelyn sat up, pushing her hair back. "I need to shower, get dressed, start dealing with this." "You need to eat first," her mother insisted. "I ordered food. It's waiting in the living room." Evelyn let herself be directed to the table, where her father was reading the Times with an expression of grim satisfaction. "Have you seen this?" He turned the paper so she could see the headline, "Society Wedding Becomes Whistleblower Moment." The article was extensive, covering everything from Lucien's background to Evelyn's reputation in the design world to the evidence she'd presented. There were quotes from legal experts saying her actions could set a precedent for how victims of financial crimes could use prenuptial agreements as leverage. "They're calling you a hero," her father said. "I'm not a hero," Evelyn said. "I'm just someone who refused to be a victim." "That's what makes you a hero," he replied. Evelyn's phone rang. Rebecca. "I saw the news," Evelyn said by way of greeting. "It's everywhere," Rebecca confirmed. "Every major outlet. Social media is exploding. You're trending worldwide, and the prosecutors want to meet with you at 5 p.m. Can you make it?" "I'll be there," Evelyn said. "Good, because they have updates. Significant ones." "Like what?" "Like Moretti's lawyers are trying to negotiate a plea deal, and like they found evidence that goes beyond money laundering. Evelyn, they think he might have been involved in more than just financial crimes." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean they found communications suggesting possible connections to violent crimes. Nothing proven yet, but enough to make them very interested in what else might be hidden in those records." Evelyn closed her eyes. "How did I not see this? How did I spend 6 years with someone who might be connected to violence and not know?" "Because he was very good at hiding it," Rebecca said firmly. "And because you trusted him. That's not a character flaw, Evelyn. That's what normal, healthy people do in relationships. They trust. He's the one who violated that trust, not you." "I keep telling myself that," Evelyn said quietly, "but part of me still feels like I should have known." "That's trauma talking. When this is over, you should talk to someone, a therapist, someone who specializes in this kind of betrayal." "Maybe," Evelyn said. "Right now I just need to get through the next few weeks. Can you send me the details for the meeting?" "Already done. And Evelyn, You should know, Moretti is making noise about wanting to see you. His lawyers keep calling. They're claiming you violated the prenup by going public, that you breached confidentiality clauses. Is that true? Absolutely not. The prenup had confidentiality provisions about private financial information, but nothing that would prevent you from reporting crimes to authorities or defending yourself publicly. His lawyers are grasping at straws, trying to intimidate you into backing down. I'm not backing down, Evelyn said. I know, but be prepared. They're going to fight dirty. The meeting with prosecutors was held in a nondescript federal building in Lower Manhattan. Evelyn arrived with Rebecca at exactly 5 p.m., both of them dressed in business attire that projected competence and credibility. They were shown to a conference room where agents Torres and Kim were waiting, along with 2 assistant U.S. attorneys. Evelyn hadn't met before. Ms. Cross, thank you for coming, said the older prosecutor, introducing herself as Sarah Vance. We wanted to update you on the investigation and get your cooperation on some additional matters. Of course, Evelyn said, sitting down. Whatever you need. Sarah slid a folder across the table. We've been going through the records seized from Moretti Holdings. What we're finding is worse than we initially thought. The money laundering is extensive and sophisticated, but we're also finding evidence of what appears to be involvement in intimidation, possibly extortion, and we're investigating potential ties to organized crime families. Evelyn felt cold. You think Lucien is connected to the Mafia? We think his family connections run deeper than public records suggest, Agent Torres said. The Moretti name has associations going back decades. Lucien tried to distance himself, rebrand, go legitimate, but our investigation suggests he never fully severed those ties, just hid them better. What does that mean for the case? It means this is bigger than financial crimes, Sarah said. If we can prove ongoing involvement with organized criminal enterprises, we're looking at RICO charges. That's 20 years minimum. Evelyn absorbed this. 20 years, Lucien could be in prison until he was in his 60s. What do you need from me? She asked. We need you to tell us everything you know about his business associates, Agent Kim said. Every meeting you attended, every person you met, every conversation that seemed odd or out of place. That could take hours, Evelyn said. We have time, Sarah replied. And Ms. Cross, we also need to warn you. If Moretti is as connected as we think he is, there's a possibility he might try to retaliate, not necessarily physically, but financially, legally, through harassment. We can offer you protective resources if you feel threatened. He's already threatening, Rebecca interjected. His lawyers are trying to claim Evelyn violated the prenup by going public. That won't hold up, Sarah said dismissively, but it tells us he's feeling cornered, desperate. That's when men like Moretti become unpredictable. What should I do? Evelyn asked. Be careful, Agent Torres said. Don't go anywhere alone for the next few weeks. Vary your routine. If anyone contacts you claiming to be from his organization, don't engage. Call us immediately. And if he tries to reach you directly, record everything. Evelyn nodded, feeling the weight of what she'd set in motion settling on her shoulders. They spent the next 3 hours going through her memories of the past 6 years. Every business dinner, every gala, every introduction she'd made. Evelyn described people she'd met, conversations she'd overheard, moments that had seemed unremarkable at the time but might mean something to investigators who knew what to look for. By the time they finished, it was past 8 p.m. and Evelyn was exhausted. We'll be in touch, Sarah said as they wrapped up. And Ms. Cross, thank you. What you did took courage. A lot of victims in your position would have just walked away quietly. You chose to fight back. That matters. Evelyn left the federal building with Rebecca and stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the darkening sky. You okay? Rebecca asked. I don't know, Evelyn admitted. 3 days ago, I thought I was about to marry the love of my life. Now I'm helping federal prosecutors build a RICO case against him. It's surreal. It's justice, Rebecca said. Slow and complicated and messy, but justice. Evelyn's phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Your office is being staked out by reporters. Might want to avoid it for a few days. She showed the message to Rebecca. Stay at the Carlisle, Rebecca advised. Work remotely. Give the media circus time to calm down. I can't hide forever. You're not hiding. You're being strategic. There's a difference. Evelyn sighed. I feel like my entire life has become strategy. Every move calculated. Every word measured. I'm exhausted. Then stop for tonight, Rebecca said. Go back to the hotel. Order room service. Watch something mindless on TV. Give yourself permission to just exist without performing or planning or protecting yourself. It was good advice. Evelyn took it. Back at the Carlisle, she found her parents watching the evening news, which was still covering the story. You're famous, her mother said, in the worst possible way. Better than being infamous, Evelyn replied. She kicked off her shoes and collapsed on the sofa. The prosecutors think this case is going to get bigger, much bigger. She filled them in on the meeting, watching her father's expression darken as she described possible RICO charges and organized crime connections. I never liked him, her father said when she finished. Something about him always felt off, but I told myself I was being overprotective, that you were happy, and that was what mattered. You couldn't have known, Evelyn said. None of us could. He was very good at seeming legitimate. That's what makes men like him so dangerous, her mother said quietly. They don't look like criminals. They look like princes. Evelyn thought about that as she got ready for bed that night. About how Lucien had looked like everything she'd wanted. Successful, charming, protective. How easy it had been to mistake control for care, possession for devotion, manipulation for love. She'd learned the difference now, learned it in the hardest way possible. But she'd survived. And tomorrow, she would start the work of making sure Lucien Moretti faced every consequence he'd earned. The next morning brought a phone call that changed everything. Evelyn was having coffee with her parents when Rebecca's name flashed across her screen. It was barely 7 a.m., too early for routine business, which meant something had happened. Moretti's lawyers want to meet, Rebecca said the moment Evelyn answered. Today, they're claiming he has information that could be valuable to the prosecution. They want to negotiate. Negotiate what? A deal. Reduce charges in exchange for testimony against his former associates. They're positioning him as someone who was forced into criminal activity by family pressure, who wants to come clean. Evelyn laughed bitterly. That's absurd. He built this empire himself. I know, but his lawyers are good, and they're desperate. The question is whether you're willing to be in the room when they make their pitch. Why would I need to be there? Because they specifically requested your presence. They claim Moretti has things to say to you directly, things that might help you understand why he did what he did. Evelyn's grip tightened on the phone. I don't want to understand. I want him to face consequences. I know, but the prosecutors think it might be worth hearing what he has to say. If he's genuinely willing to cooperate, it could help them build cases against much bigger players, people who've been operating in the shadows for decades. And if I say no, then they meet without you. But Evelyn, this might be your only chance to confront him on your terms, with lawyers and federal agents present, to say whatever you need to say before this goes to trial, and you're just another witness. Evelyn looked at her parents. Her mother was watching her with worried eyes. Her father looked like he wanted to forbid her from going anywhere near Lucien ever again. When and where? Evelyn asked. 11 a.m. Federal Building. Conference room with full security. He'll be in custody the entire time. You'll be completely safe. I'll be there, Evelyn said. Her mother immediately started to protest, but Evelyn held up a hand. I need to do this, she said. I need to look him in the eye and let him know that I'm not afraid of him anymore, that he didn't break me. He could say terrible things, her mother warned. Try to hurt you. Let him try, Evelyn said. Whatever he says can't be worse than what he's already done. At 10:30, Evelyn arrived at the federal building wearing a charcoal gray suit that was all business. No crimson this time. No statement colors, just professional armor and the calm expression she'd perfected over years of difficult client meetings. Rebecca met her in the lobby. You sure about this? No, Evelyn admitted, but I'm doing it anyway. They were escorted to a conference room on the 8th floor. The prosecutors were already there, Sarah Vance and her team, along with agents Torres and Kim. They'd arranged the room carefully. Lucien would sit at one end of the table with his lawyers, Evelyn and Rebecca at the other end, federal agents positioned near the door. He'll be brought in wearing restraints, Sarah explained. Standard procedure for someone in federal custody. His lawyers have already tried to argue it's prejudicial, but this isn't a courtroom. This is a negotiation. What exactly are they offering? Evelyn asked. Full cooperation, names, records, testimony against his former associates. In exchange, they want the money laundering charges reduced and any potential RICO charges dropped entirely. Will you agree to that? Sarah's expression was hard. Depends on what he gives us. If he can help us take down people who've been operating criminal enterprises for decades, it might be worth letting him serve 8 years instead of 20. 8 years, Evelyn repeated. It seemed simultaneously too little and too long. Too little for what he'd done to her. Too long to wait for closure. Ms. Cross, Sarah said gently, you don't have to agree to anything. This isn't your decision. We just thought you deserved to hear what he has to say. And to tell him what I need to say, Evelyn replied. The door opened and Lucien was led in. Evelyn had prepared herself for this moment, but seeing him still hit like a physical blow. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of his usual expensive suits. His hands were cuffed in front of him. He looked tired, diminished, nothing like the powerful man who'd commanded every room he entered. But his eyes were the same, dark and sharp and calculating. He saw Evelyn and something flickered across his face. Regret? Anger? She couldn't tell and didn't care. His lawyers, 2 men in suits that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, sat on either side of him. One of them immediately started speaking. Mr. Moretti appreciates the opportunity to address these matters directly. He wants Miss Cross to know that he deeply regrets the pain he's caused her. Then he can tell me himself, Evelyn said coldly. The lawyer looked uncomfortable but nodded to Lucien. Lucien leaned forward as much as the restraints would allow. Evelyn, I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better. You're right, Evelyn said. I did, but sorry isn't enough. Sorry doesn't undo 6 years of lies. I know, Lucien said quietly. I know I destroyed what we had. I know I used you. I know I... He paused. I know there's nothing I can say that will make this better. So why am I here? Evelyn demanded. Your lawyer said you had things to tell me, things that would help me understand. So talk. Lucien glanced at his attorneys, who nodded permission. I was born into a family with expectations, he began. The Moretti name came with debts I didn't choose, obligations I couldn't refuse. By the time I was 20, I was already too deep in the life to get out clean. Poor little rich criminal, Evelyn said. Is this the sob story you're selling to the prosecutors? Because I'm not buying it. It's not a sob story, Lucien said. It's the truth. Yes, I made choices, bad ones. I could have walked away, could have refused to participate. But I didn't. I wanted the power, the money, the respect that comes from being feared. He paused, and then I met you. Don't, Evelyn warned. You were everything I wasn't, Lucien continued. Legitimate, honest, built your success through talent instead of intimidation. And I actually thought I could become that, could borrow your legitimacy until it became real, could transform into the man you believed I was. Except you didn't, Evelyn said. You just used my reputation to commit more crimes. I tried, Lucien insisted. For the first few years, I genuinely tried to go straight, shut down the illegal operations, clean up the money, build something legitimate. His voice dropped. But my family wouldn't let me. They had hooks in me too deep, information that could destroy me if I didn't cooperate. So I compromised, kept one foot in each world, stayed clean enough to be with you publicly while staying dirty enough to satisfy the people I owed. And Lila? Evelyn asked. Where does she fit into this tragic tale of a man torn between 2 worlds? Lucien's jaw tightened. That was weakness, pure selfishness. I was exhausted from maintaining 2 identities, from being the person you needed me to be while still answering to people who saw me as a tool. Lila was easy, uncomplicated. She didn't challenge me or expect me to be better. She just accepted whatever version of me showed up. She was 26 years old, Evelyn said. You manipulated her the same way you manipulated me. I know. And the baby? Was that just weakness too? Lucien looked away. That was carelessness. And once it happened, I thought I could manage it. Thought I could have everything. The legitimate life with you, the easy escape with her, the criminal empire that kept my family satisfied. I thought I was smart enough to juggle it all. Instead, you lost everything, Evelyn said. Instead, you took everything, Lucien corrected. There was no anger in his voice, just a kind of exhausted acknowledgement. You were smarter than I gave you credit for. I underestimated you. Thought you were too in love to see clearly, too invested in our future to question the foundation it was built on. You underestimated my survival instinct, Evelyn said. I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm not asking you to, Lucian said. He looked at her directly for the first time since entering the room. I'm asking you to believe me when I say I did care about you. In my own twisted, selfish way, I cared. You weren't just a tool. You were... He struggled for words. You were the woman I wish I'd been good enough to actually deserve. Evelyn felt something crack in her chest. Not sympathy, not forgiveness, just a kind of sad recognition that he might actually believe what he was saying. That's not love, Lucien, she said quietly. That's projection. You didn't love me. You loved the idea of being the kind of man who could be with someone like me. There's a difference. Maybe, Lucian conceded. Or maybe I'm just not capable of loving anyone the way normal people do. Maybe I'm too damaged, too corrupted by the life I was born into. That's a convenient excuse, Evelyn said. Blame your family. Blame your circumstances. Never take actual responsibility for your choices. One of Lucien's lawyers cleared his throat. Mr. Moretti is prepared to take responsibility. That's why we're here. He's willing to provide detailed testimony about his criminal associates, including several high-ranking members of organized crime families. Sarah Vance leaned forward. What specifically can you offer? Names, Lucian said. Financial records. Locations of assets that have been hidden for decades. Information about ongoing criminal operations. I can give you enough to take down at least 6 major players. In exchange for what? Reduced charges, protective custody, a new identity when I get out. Lucien looked at Evelyn. And a chance to make sure at least some of the money I stole gets returned to the people who were hurt. How noble, Evelyn said dryly. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Lucian said. I'm asking for a chance to do one decent thing before I spend the next decade in prison. Sarah looked at Evelyn. Miss Cross, do you have questions for Mr. Moretti? Anything you need to ask him? Evelyn had 1,000 questions, but most of them didn't matter anymore. Most of them were just different ways of asking why. Why her? Why this way? Why couldn't he have been honest? Instead, she asked the only question that actually mattered. Did you ever love me? Really love me? Even for a moment? Lucian was quiet for a long time, long enough that his lawyers started to look uncomfortable, long enough that Evelyn almost told him to forget it, that she didn't want to know. Finally, he spoke. I loved the version of myself I became when I was with you, he said quietly. I loved feeling like someone worth loving. I loved the future we talked about, the life we could have built if I'd been brave enough to actually become legitimate. He paused. But did I love you enough to be honest? To sacrifice my other life for you? To choose you over power and money and the approval of men who don't deserve approval? His voice cracked. No, I didn't, and I'm sorrier for that than for anything else I've done. Evelyn felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. Thank you, she said, for finally telling me the truth. She stood. Rebecca immediately stood with her. Ms. Cross, one of Lucian's lawyers began. We're done here, Evelyn said. Whatever deal you negotiate with the prosecutors is between you and them. I have nothing more to say. She walked to the door, then paused and turned back. For what it's worth, Lucian, I hope you do help them. I hope you provide information that takes down people who've been hurting others for decades. Not because it'll earn you a lighter sentence, but because maybe, just maybe, you can do one genuinely good thing before this is over. Evelyn, Lucian started. Goodbye, she said firmly. I hope I never see you again. She left the conference room with Rebecca at her side and didn't look back. In the hallway, she finally let herself breathe. You okay? Rebecca asked. No, Evelyn said, but I will be. Over the next 3 weeks, the case against Lucien Moretti and his associates dominated headlines. True to his word, Lucien provided prosecutors with information that led to indictments of 7 major organized crime figures. The FBI conducted coordinated raids across 3 states. Assets worth millions were seized. Lucien's cooperation earned him a plea deal. 8 years in federal prison with the possibility of parole after 5. Not enough, in Evelyn's opinion, but more than some people served for worse crimes. Lila disappeared into witness protection with her baby. Evelyn heard through Rebecca that she'd given birth to a healthy girl and moved somewhere far from New York, somewhere she could start over without the shadow of Lucien Moretti following her. Moretti Holdings declared bankruptcy. The legitimate parts of the business were sold off to pay creditors and settle lawsuits. The illegitimate parts simply dissolved, their assets seized by federal authorities. The investors who'd trusted Lucien, partly because of Evelyn's endorsement, faced significant losses. Most of them understood she'd been deceived just like they had. A few muttered about due diligence and warning signs, but those voices were drowned out by the overwhelming support from people who recognized her as a victim who'd fought back. Cross Design Collective survived the scandal. In fact, it thrived. Evelyn's courage in exposing Lucien attracted new clients who admired her integrity. Her reputation, which she'd feared would be destroyed by association with a criminal, instead became stronger for having survived betrayal and emerged victorious. She threw herself into work with an intensity that worried her friends and family but kept her sane. She redesigned her office, removing every trace of Lucien's influence. She hired a new assistant to replace Lila, an experienced woman in her 40s who had no interest in drama and excellent boundaries. She took on projects that challenged her, that reminded her why she'd fallen in love with design in the first place. And slowly, painfully, she began to heal. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, Evelyn stood in the West Village apartment she'd once shared with Lucien. She'd avoided coming back here, letting movers pack up her belongings while she stayed safely removed from the memories embedded in these walls. But today, she needed to see it one last time before the lease expired and someone else moved into this space. The apartment was empty now, every piece of furniture gone, every personal item removed, just bare walls and polished floors and the ghosts of a future that would never exist. Evelyn walked through the rooms slowly, letting herself remember. The library where she'd sat with her wine the night she'd discovered the truth. The bedroom where she'd cried for exactly 3 minutes before forcing herself to keep moving. The kitchen where she'd played the perfect fiancé while planning Lucien's destruction. It all felt like it had happened to someone else. A different Evelyn. A more naive version who believed in fairy tales. Her phone rang. Rebecca. The last of the asset seizures went through, Rebecca said. The prosecutors are establishing a victims fund with some of the recovered money. People who lost investments or were defrauded will be able to file claims. That's good, Evelyn said. At least some people will get something back. There's also money designated for a charitable foundation. The prosecutors want to honor the spirit of what you tried to do with Lucien. Create something legitimate and helpful. They're offering you a seat on the board if you want it. Evelyn considered. A foundation built from the ashes of Lucien's criminal empire, using his stolen wealth to actually help people instead of enriching him further. What kind of foundation? She asked. They're proposing it focus on helping women escape abusive relationships and rebuild their lives. Job training, legal assistance, housing support, things that would have helped someone like Lila. Evelyn smiled despite herself. That's poetic. Is that a yes? That's a yes, Evelyn confirmed. Send me the details. She ended the call and took one last look around the empty apartment. Then she walked out and closed the door on that chapter of her life. 1 year after the day she was supposed to marry Lucien Moretti, Evelyn stood in front of a different kind of audience. The grand ballroom at the plaza was filled again, but this time with people celebrating something real. The Evelyn Cross Foundation for Survivors had officially launched, funded by restitution money from Lucien's criminal enterprise and donations from supporters who'd been inspired by her story. Evelyn stood at a podium, looking out at faces she recognized. Her parents, beaming with pride. Rebecca, who'd become more friend than lawyer over the past year. Former clients who'd stuck with her through the scandal. New clients who'd been drawn to her precisely because of how she'd handled adversity. And in the front row, a young woman holding a baby. Lila. Evelyn had been surprised when Lila reached out through Rebecca, asking if she could attend the launch. Surprised, but not upset. A year of therapy had helped Evelyn separate Lila's actions from Lucien's manipulation. Had helped her understand that two people could be hurt by the same man in different ways, and that didn't make either of them the enemy. A year ago, Evelyn said into the microphone, I stood in a room very much like this one and told you about betrayal. about discovering that the man I loved was actually a criminal who'd been using me, about choosing to fight back instead of staying silent. The room was quiet, everyone listening. Today, I'm standing here to tell you about what happened after, about the hard work of rebuilding a reputation, about learning to trust again, not just other people, but myself, about transforming pain into purpose. She clicked to a slide showing the Foundation's mission statement. The Evelyn Cross Foundation exists to help people who've been victimized by those they trusted, domestic abuse survivors, financial fraud victims, people who've been manipulated and controlled and made to feel like they have no options. We provide legal assistance, job training, housing support, and most importantly, we provide a community of people who understand what it's like to survive someone who didn't want you to. Applause filled the room. This foundation exists because of money recovered from Lucien Moretti's criminal operations, Evelyn continued. Money he stole, laundered, and used to build power while hurting people. Now that money will help people rebuild what men like him destroyed. That feels like justice to me. More applause. Evelyn waited for it to quiet. I've been asked many times over the past year whether I regret my relationship with Lucien, whether I wish I'd never met him, never trusted him, never opened my life to someone who hurt me so badly. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I regret that he made the choices he did. I regret that people were hurt because I unknowingly helped legitimize a criminal. I regret the time I wasted believing in someone who didn't deserve my faith. But I don't regret being the kind of person who believes in love, who sees the best in people, who trusts and hopes and dreams. Her voice strengthened. Because that's not weakness. That's humanity. The problem was never that I trusted too much. The problem was that he betrayed that trust, and I refused to let his failures change who I am at my core. The audience was on their feet now, applauding. Evelyn felt tears on her cheeks, but didn't wipe them away. So here's what I want everyone to take from my story, she said. If you've been betrayed, it's not your fault. If you've been manipulated, you're not stupid. If you've been hurt by someone you loved, you're not weak for having loved them. You're human. And being human, being capable of trust and hope and love, is never something to apologize for. She looked directly at Lila. We survive by supporting each other, by refusing to let the people who hurt us define our worth, by transforming pain into purpose and creating something beautiful from the ashes of what they destroyed. More applause. Evelyn stepped back from the podium and was immediately surrounded by well-wishers. Later, after most of the guests had left, Lila approached her. The baby was sleeping in her arms, tiny and perfect. Thank you, Lila said quietly, for everything. For protecting me when you had every right to hate me. For this. She gestured at the banners announcing the foundation. For showing me that survival is possible. Evelyn looked at the baby, at new life born from chaos and mistakes, and a man who'd hurt them both. What's her name? She asked. Hope, Lila said. Because that's what you gave me. Hope that we could survive him. Evelyn touched the baby's tiny hand. She's beautiful. I hope she has a wonderful life, far away from all of this. We're in Portland now, Lila said. New names, new start. I'm finishing my degree. Working part-time at a design firm, actually. Turns out I learned a lot from you. You were always talented, Evelyn said. You just made bad choices about who to trust. But we both did that. I'm sorry, Lila said again. I know I've said it before, but I need you to know. I was young and stupid and thought I was in love. I didn't realize until too late that he was just using both of us. I know, Evelyn said, and I forgive you, not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to anger would only hurt me. You were a victim too, just a different kind. Lila's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not, Evelyn said, but I'm giving it anyway, because I deserve to let go of the resentment, to move forward without carrying the weight of what happened. They stood there for a moment, two women connected by the same man's betrayal, both surviving in their own ways. Be happy, Evelyn said finally. You and Hope. Build a good life. That's the best revenge against men like Lucien, proving that they didn't destroy us. Lila nodded, crying openly now. Then she hugged Evelyn briefly and left, disappearing into whatever new life she'd built far from Lucien's shadow. Evelyn's mother found her standing alone by the windows, looking out at Central Park. That was incredibly gracious, her mother said, forgiving her. I didn't do it for her, Evelyn replied. I did it for me. Carrying around anger at a 26-year-old who was manipulated as badly as I was, that's just another way of letting Lucian control my life. I won't give him that power. You've grown so much this past year, her mother said softly. I'm proud of you. I survived, Evelyn said. That's not the same as thriving, but I'm working on it. Are you happy? Evelyn considered the question. Was she happy? Not the way she'd been happy in those deluded years with Lucien, when happiness was based on beautiful lies. But there was a different kind of contentment now, a peace that came from knowing exactly who she was and what she was capable of. I'm getting there, she said finally. I have my work, my company, this foundation. People who genuinely care about me instead of what I can do for them. That's more than a lot of people have. What about romance? Her mother asked gently. Will you let yourself trust someone again? Someday, Evelyn said. When I meet someone who earns it, someone who's honest from the start, someone who sees me as a partner, not a tool. She smiled. I have high standards now. Surviving a con artist will do that to you. Her mother laughed and hugged her. 2 years after the wedding, that never happened. Evelyn received a letter. It arrived at her office, forwarded through several layers of legal review to make sure it wasn't a threat. The return address was a federal correctional facility upstate. Lucien. Evelyn almost threw it away without reading it. She'd moved on, built a life that didn't include him in any way. What could he possibly have to say that would matter? But curiosity won. She opened the envelope and pulled out a single page covered in handwriting she recognized from 1,000 love notes he'd written her over the years. Evelyn, I don't expect you to read this. I wouldn't blame you if you burned it the moment you saw my name. But if you are reading this, I want you to know a few things. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, about the choices I made, about the people I hurt. The prosecutors tell me that the information I provided has led to the dismantling of criminal operations that have existed for decades. That people are safer because I finally chose to do the right thing. I'd like to pretend that makes up for the harm I caused, but I know it doesn't. I saw a news article about your foundation, about the work you're doing to help people survive the kind of manipulation I specialized in. It's fitting, poetic even. You took the worst thing I ever did and transformed it into something that helps people. That's always been who you are, someone who creates beauty even in the ugliest circumstances. I want you to know that I think about you often. Not in a romantic way. I lost the right to those feelings when I betrayed you. But I think about the woman you were when we met. The woman who believed I could be better. The woman who saw potential in me that I never lived up to. And I think about the woman you became after you discovered the truth. Strong, fierce, unbreakable. I'm proud of that woman, even though I have no right to be. Even though I'm the reason she had to become so strong in the first place. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking you to write back or visit or acknowledge this letter in any way. I'm just asking you to know that you were right about everything. I didn't love you the way you deserved to be loved. I used you. I betrayed you. I hurt you in ways that can't be undone. But you survived me, and that's more than I deserve. Take care of yourself, Evelyn Cross. Build beautiful things. Help people who need helping. Live the kind of life I wish I'd been strong enough to build with you honestly. You deserve better than me. I hope you find it. Lucien. Evelyn read the letter 3 times, feeling emotions she couldn't quite name. Not love, not forgiveness, but maybe something like closure. She walked to the window of her office, a different office now, in a building she owned, decorated with her own success instead of borrowed legitimacy, and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there were women like she'd been, trusting someone who didn't deserve it, building futures on foundations of lies, not yet knowing that betrayal was coming. She couldn't save all of them, couldn't prevent every heartbreak, but she could help them survive after, could give them resources and support and proof that life continued after the worst thing happened. That was enough. Evelyn folded Lucien's letter and put it in a drawer, not to treasure, not to reread, just to acknowledge and move past. Then she got back to work. 5 years after the wedding that never happened, Evelyn stood in a different cathedral. Not St. Patrick's this time, but a small chapel in Connecticut where her college roommate was getting married. Evelyn was a bridesmaid, wearing pale blue instead of white, watching her friend marry someone who'd courted her honestly and patiently for 3 years before proposing. During the ceremony, when the officiant asked if anyone objected, Evelyn found herself holding her breath, remembering the day she was supposed to stand at an altar, remembering everything that had happened instead. But no one objected. The couple exchanged vows that sounded genuine, made promises they actually intended to keep. At the reception, Evelyn found herself talking to the best man, a corporate lawyer named James who had kind eyes and an easy laugh. "Evelyn Cross," he said when they were introduced. "I've heard about you, the designer who took down a mafia boss." Evelyn smiled. "That's a dramatic retelling. Is it inaccurate?" "Only slightly. He wasn't technically mafia, just connected to them." James laughed. "That's an important distinction." They talked for an hour, about work and travel and books they'd read. James didn't press her about Lucian beyond that initial recognition, didn't treat her like a survivor who needed careful handling, just talked to her like a person. At the end of the night, he asked for her number. "I'd like to take you to dinner sometime," he said. "If you're interested, no pressure, just two people sharing a meal and conversation." Evelyn hesitated. It had been 5 years since Lucian, 5 years of therapy and healing and learning to trust herself again. 5 years of telling herself that someday she'd be ready to let someone new into her life. Maybe someday was now. "I'd like that," she said, and gave him her number. Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant in Greenwich Village. James was early and nervous, which Evelyn found endearing. Over wine and pasta, he asked about her work. Not about the scandal, but about the actual design projects she was passionate about, the foundation she'd built, the life she'd created. "I did read about what happened," James admitted halfway through dinner. "With your ex-fiancé. I wanted to be honest about that." "And?" Evelyn asked. "And I think you're incredibly brave. But more than that, I think you're talented and interesting, and I'd like to get to know you as the person you are now, not the person you were in that story." It was the perfect thing to say. They dated slowly. James was patient, understanding when Evelyn needed space, careful never to push beyond her boundaries. He was honest about his own life, a divorce 3 years prior, an 8-year-old daughter he shared custody of, a career he loved but that sometimes consumed too much of his time. No secrets, no hidden agendas, just a man who liked her and wanted to build something real. 6 months into their relationship, James met Evelyn's parents. Her father, still protective after everything that had happened with Lucian, interrogated him over dinner about his intentions and his character. James took it gracefully. "I can't promise I'll be perfect," he said. "I'll probably work too late sometimes. I'll definitely be distracted when my daughter's having a tough week. I might forget important dates or say the wrong thing at the wrong time. But I can promise I'll be honest. I'll respect Evelyn's autonomy and her achievements, and I'll never, ever use her for anything except the genuine partnership she deserves." Her father had approved. 7 years after the wedding that never happened, Evelyn Cross stood in front of another mirror, wearing another wedding dress. This one was simpler than the first, elegant but understated. Not a dress designed to impress 500 guests at a society wedding, but a dress chosen because it made her feel beautiful. Her mother was there, crying happy tears. Rebecca was there too, maid of honor this time instead of lawyer. "Are you ready?" her mother asked. Evelyn looked at her reflection. She was older now, different, marked by the experiences that had transformed her from a naive woman who believed in fairy tales to someone who understood that real love required honesty and effort in choosing each other every day. "I'm ready," she said. The ceremony was small, just 50 people in a garden at sunset, friends and family who'd supported her through the worst and celebrated with her through the rebuilding. James waited at the altar with his daughter beside him, their daughter now, since Evelyn had grown to love the 8-year-old with the gap-toothed smile and endless questions about design. When Evelyn walked down the aisle, there was no orchestra, just a string quartet playing something simple and beautiful. When she reached James, he took her hands and looked at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. The vows they exchanged were ones they'd written together, honest promises about partnership and respect, and choosing each other even when it was hard. When the officiant pronounced them married, Evelyn kissed her husband and felt something settle into place. Not the desperate, anxious love she'd felt with Lucienne, always afraid it would disappear if she made a wrong move, but something steadier, calmer. built on a foundation of truth instead of beautiful lies. At the reception, her father gave a toast. 7 years ago, he said, my daughter was supposed to marry someone else. When that wedding didn't happen, I thought my heart would break for her. I thought she'd been robbed of her happy ending. He looked at Evelyn and James. But I was wrong. She wasn't robbed of anything. She was saved from a life built on deception. And she used that survival to build something better, something real. He raised his glass. To Evelyn, who taught us all that the strongest thing you can do is survive someone who tried to break you. And to James, who's smart enough to see exactly how extraordinary she is. Everyone drank. Later, dancing with James under string lights in the garden, Evelyn thought about the woman she'd been 7 years ago. So confident in a future that was never real. So certain that love meant never questioning, never doubting, never protecting herself. She was grateful to that woman for surviving, for finding the strength to fight back when it would have been easier to accept defeat. But she was also grateful she wasn't that woman anymore. What are you thinking about? James asked, pulling her closer. How different this is from what I imagined my wedding would be, Evelyn said honestly. Better or worse? Better, she said without hesitation. So much better, because it's real. James kissed her forehead. That's all I want to be, real with you, every day. That's all I need, Evelyn replied. They danced until the stars came out, surrounded by people who loved them genuinely, celebrating something built on honesty instead of strategy. And Evelyn Cross, who'd survived betrayal and fought her way back to trusting and loving again, finally got her happy ending. Not the one she'd planned, the one she deserved.